Policy and Resources Select meeting. I hope you're all well, and I hope none of you have had to go to hospital or any relatives have had any problems with COVID.
Chairman,
said earlier.
Sorry, Chairman, if I could interrupt. If you're ready to start the meeting, if we can start the webcast, please.
Yep, okay.
Thank you.
Chairman, can I also just say, I've just had another note from Bruce to say he's going to try and attend the meeting by phone. I don't know if Louise has to do anything to enable that, but
Okay.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that'll be interesting. Okay. So are we on yet?
I'll just confirm, Chairman. Yes, we're now live.
Right, we'll start again. Good morning, everybody. We're living in strange times, but it's good to see you all. And as I said earlier, I do hope none of you have either been involved with COVID or had any close relations involved in COVID. The programs you see on television are really very moving these days when they bring it down to what's happening to individuals. I'll just give me a second. Right. I'll begin by reading the names of the members on the committee so that you can confirm your attendance for the public record. Members, please remain unmuted and confirm your attendance. I'm hearing myself repeating. That's going to be actually.
Do you have your iPad near your hybrid?
So you talking to me, Louise?
Yes.
I've got my hybrid and I've got a couple of iPads on, but I think we're
Chairman, it seems to have corrected now.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I'll read out your names and I'd be grateful if you could just confirm your attendance and we'll do it in turn. I'll start with myself. I'm Councillor Jonathan Glenn, Chairman of the Policy and Resources Committee. Adam Carew. Are you here? Councillor Carew.
I'm here, Chairman.
Can
you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good.
Councillor Fran Carpenter.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Adrian Collett.
Present.
Very good. Councillor Roger Huckstep.
Present.
Councillor Peter Latham.
Present.
Councillor Anna McNair Scott.
I'm present.
Yeah. Councillor Kirsty North.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Russell Oppenheimer.
I'm present, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Jackie Porter.
Good morning, present.
Thank you. We know about Councillor Bruce Tennant. Hopefully he'll join us by telephone. Councillor Michael Westbrook, I know you're here.
Present, Chairman.
And Councillor Bill Withers.
Morning, Chairman.
And finally, Councillor Angela Gibson, who's attending as a substitute, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Also attending is Councillor Keith Manns, the leader of the Council, an executive member for Policy and Resources. You don't have to. Well, yes, do go, Keith. Yeah, you are here, Keith.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, leader. We have Councillor Stephen Reid, executive member for Commercial Strategy, Human Resources and Performance. Well, he's certainly invited, and I was told he was coming.
Could I just also confirm, Chairman, that Bruce Tennant has now joined the meeting?
Welcome, Councillor Tennant.
Thank you, Chair.
Hope all is well.
Logging on in this unusual way.
Yes. Are you? You're parked, are you?
Yes, I'm outside Southampton General Hospital.
Right. Well, we wish your wife all the very best. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Now, do actually cut yourself off if you have to drive her home in the middle of the meeting. Okay.
I will. Thank you.
I'd like to remind members that the Constitution standing orders will apply. Please keep your microphone muted unless you have been called to speak, and that you may be visible on the screen to the public and to other members, even when you're not speaking. Right, apologies for absence. Louise, I don't think we have any, do we?
No, we don't, Chairman.
Okay, excellent. Declarations of interest. Do any members have any declaration on any item that they would like to bring to our attention? And if you don't think about it now, you can bring it up when we reach the item. Right, here we go into the item 3, the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of November. We have one, before I go into it, we have one correction for you all before you all bring it up. We all know it was not held at Winchester. It was a virtual meeting, and we will correct the minutes to show that, okay? I can see you smiling, Councillor Collett. You can strike that off your complaint list, okay? Now, we'll go through them for accuracy. Page 1, we'll just do it by the actual page. It's called page 5. Page 6. And page 7. And are there any comments that anyone would like to make about the minutes? On page 5, page 6, and page 7. In that case, we'll treat them as all agreed. Are we all agreed on that? Just show your hand.
Agreed.
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 Thank you. And that's a virtual signing, I presume, Louise, is that right?
That is, yes.
Okay. Right. Deputations. I don't believe we have any, is that correct?
Yes, Chairman, no deputations have been received.
Okay. Right, Chairman's announcements. Okay, we've got quite a full agenda. So, and we've got quite a bit to do on budgetary items. And then there's a couple of more items at the end. And I don't want it just squeezed in at the very end. So we'll try and keep the meeting moving. However, I'd like to start quite rightly, and then you will know what I'm going to say. It's about the really unfortunate death of Councillor Keith Evans. I'm going to say just a short bit because there will be a proper, as it were, celebration of his life and his work at the full council meeting on the 25th of February. And I'm not going to ask everyone to say something about him. Please keep your, as it were, your powder dry until that date. But something must be said. He was our deputy chairman. Born 1943 and died in 2020. He was 77. County councillor for Fair and Warsash and very highly respected. A family man, married to Eve for almost 50 years with 3 children and 4 grandchildren. He had a career in IT and worked with the local community for over 30 years as a councillor, and he was very, very loyal to his leadership and to his party. He was our deputy chairman for many years. I could always depend on his straightforward, no-nonsense approach to the job. He was very open-minded and was a great advocate of fair play. The sort of person you want to be working with you when you're running meetings like this. More will be said, as I said, on the 25th of February. His family funeral took place yesterday at the Wessex Hospital, the Wessex, the Wessex, I think it was a crematorium. I miss him very much, as I'm sure you all do. It was always good to know he was there at your right hand, especially during our meetings when we're meeting face to face. Please have a look at the website celebrating his life, and you can donate to 2 Saints if you wish to do so. It's really never enough about a person's life when you read it out, and I'm quite certain we'll hear some fine words about him at the full council meeting. But thank you very much, Keith, for all you've done for us.
Chairman,
Yes.
I know you don't want this to be lots of tributes from lots of people, but as the opposition spokesperson, could I just echo your comments about Keith? The loss of Keith is very sad for all of us, and he was a very fair man. Didn't matter who you represented, who you were. If you wanted to say something, he made sure you got your opportunity to say something. He was fair in the way he chaired the audit committee, and in every dealing with him, I never had any reason to cross swords with him, if I can put it that way. He was a great example of what a good councillor should be, and he's a very sad loss. It brings home the reality of this COVID pandemic and how it impacts on people when it's someone you know.
That's right. No, thank you. I'm going to, Mike Westbrook, I know this is short notice, so since we've allowed Adrian Collett to say a few words. Mike, if you want to say anything, you are at liberty to do so.
Yeah, just really echoing all the comments that have already been made, Chairman. I didn't know Keith that well, but my experience with Keith has been on this committee the past few years, and I found him to be very fair. One of the things I found was really great as a chairman, as a vice chair. He was always had his eye on the committee and allowed people to speak fairly within that committee, which I found really refreshing. Opposition as well. Yeah, and he'll be greatly missed. That's it really. Thanks, Chairman.
Look, Michael, thank you very much. That was very short notice for you, but thank you. One other point, I have asked Roger Huckstep to stand in as acting deputy chairman for the day today. I can say that obviously our leader is aware that the leader of the council is aware that Keith is no longer with us. Keith Evans is no longer with us, and we will be needing a permanent deputy chairman at some point, and that will be chosen at the right time. Right, now we go into items 6, 7, and 8. These are budget reports. We have decided that they'll be done, it'll be one collective presentation. You'll find them all in mot.gov, and all the officers will basically do their presentations. I will allow hands to go up for clarification of anything that's said at any point. So just put your hand up. We'll stop the officer talking, doing a presentation, and just ask for clarification. Please don't go into debate at that point, because taking them separately will take a long time, and there's a fair bit of repetition. At the end of the presentation, I'll then ask for questions, and on completion of not just questions but also debate, etc., that we will have a voting poll, which will be done on each item. So there'll be a voting on item 6, then on 7, and then on 8. Our Democratic Services officer will confirm the outcome of the polls for the record. Now, Louise, have I got that right?
That's correct, Chairman.
Very good. Okay. Right, we have the first item 6, which is the revenue budget for corporate services, pages which are pages 9 to 24 on the mod.gov, is being brought to our attention by Rob Carr. I'd like to welcome Rob Carr to the meeting.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members. I assume that you're happy to follow the presentation on ModGov rather than me present it. I'll just sort of tell you when I'm moving on from different slides. Is that okay?
Everybody happy with that? Thank you very much, Rob.
Yeah. So just in terms of the content today, so I'm going to cover off the sort of corporate items, and then Felicity Rowe will pick up the departmental specific items later on in the presentation. So just moving on to the sort of county council context. So I'm on the slide which is efficiency and transformation programs. So I think members will be familiar with this particular slide. So since 2008-10, we've had a series of savings and transformation programs, which by April 2021 we'll have taken out £560 million from the budget over that period. And as you'll also be aware, we've also set a further £80 million savings programme in train to be delivered by the 1st of April 2023. But as far as the budget is concerned today, obviously we will be implementing the transformation to 2021 savings, and those are reflected in the budget proposals that you've got. So just moving on in terms of the budget forecast position. So this is what we've been planning for some time. So obviously we've had limited information from the government, so we've been working on the basis of an £80 million gap over the 2 years to 21-22. And those were approved back in November 2019 to give us the time to deliver those. As with T19, we were expecting some delays in the delivery of that programme, so we've also had to put aside sufficient cash flow funding in order to close the gap in the meantime. The original budget forecast was based on a 3.99% council tax increase, because we didn't know whether there would be any additional flexibility. And of course, this was all before the impact of COVID-19. So just in terms of the next slide, COVID-19, I have to say, in all my career in finance, sorry, there's a comment there, not getting the slides.
Yes, if you just do the slide number, that would help the members. You're on page 7, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm on slide 7 at the moment. COVID-19 as reported in Cabinet in November. So unfortunately with COVID-19, there's a bit of a lag in the actual reporting of that, because obviously it is a very fast moving item. And obviously when you then take in the lead times associated with Cabinet and committees, etc., we do tend to be reporting some time behind. So this is the position as at Cabinet in November, and obviously we're currently in the position of preparing an update for the Cabinet in February. So the approach that the County Council has taken is to try and deal with COVID-19 as a one-off impact, in order to protect the resources that we've currently got in place to support the savings programmes that we need to put in place. So as at November Cabinet, we were still assuming that around there would be a gap of around £210 million in the medium term position. That included a lot of very high level estimates around council tax and business rates. So in effect, we've had no information from the billing authorities on what that position looked like, and we certainly had nothing when we reported to Cabinet in November. So at that point, we were expecting a gap of 210 million. We had put together a county council response package of 160 million, but that still left a gap of 50 million, which we were expecting to be covered through government funding, and we were continuing to lobby on that basis. Clearly, that position has changed. As I say, we will do an update in February Cabinet, which will update on the various announcements that the government have made. So just moving on to slide 8 and then slide 9. So the provisional local government finance settlement. I've said many times before, effectively we have been blind since 2019-20. We've been expecting a multi-year settlement for some years now, but due to various reasons, Brexit and then COVID, we've only ever had 1 year settlements. We got the same again for 21-22, just a single year spending review, and then on the 17th of December, the provisional settlement was announced. And the key items within that was, once again, we've been given the council tax flexibility to generate an extra 1% on the adult social care precept, which for us would be around £7 million. Moving on to slide 10. There was 300 million announced for additional social care funding. Based on the previous distribution methodology, we expected to get around 5 million of that. Unfortunately, we only received 1.2 million, and that's due to them changing the methodology to heavily weight it towards areas with low council tax basis. So we only got 1.2 million as a result of that. Very helpfully, and to go towards the medium-term COVID impact that I talked about earlier, we received a tranche 5 of COVID funding of £24 million. And also we've received £8.1 million to effectively compensate us for loss of council tax income for next financial year, 21-22. So that's about 32 million towards that 50 million that I talked about earlier. It's also a bit of a surprise that they've continued with the new homes bonus. So they've been talking about doing something about that for some considerable time, but they've continued with that as per the current year, and we've received £3.9 million as a result of that. Just moving on to slide 11 and then 12. So this is the familiar slide that I bring to you each year. So our reserves strategy is well rehearsed. We do still have reserves of 643 million as at 31st of March last year, but over half of that is committed to existing capital and revenue spending programmes. There's 92 million in departmental cost of change reserves. Whilst that sounds a lot, most of that will be required to support the implementation of T19 and T21 savings proposals, and also to cash flow the late delivery of some of that within departments. We provide nearly £46 million to mitigate risks, which is mainly the insurance reserve. And then we also hold reserves on behalf of other organisations, so 15 million for schools reserves and 5.1 million pounds for the Enterprise M3 LEB. Our general fund balance stands at 22.3 million, and that's broadly in line with the minimum reserves policy agreed by the Chief Financial Officer. In terms of our COVID-19 response package, whilst we're not using much of our reserves to make up that package, because obviously most of them are earmarked for other purposes, what has been helpful is having those reserves at the level that we've got gave us the flexibility to use those over the medium term period in order to address the deficit. So that has been, having that strength of reserves has been very important to us. Moving on to slide 13, the reserves strategy. So we talk about that element of reserves which is truly available to support one-off spending, and those are the items that I normally bring to you. Clearly, by far the biggest is the budget bridging reserve, which stands at £78.5 million, and often make the comment that single reserve is bigger than some county councils have in their total reserves, which is quite interesting. So whilst that is quite significant, we do intend to draw down 44 million of that in the current financial year, because it's the interim year between the savings programmes, so we have to draw down in order to balance the budget in that year. So quite a significant amount of that will be used. Just moving on to the transformation programmes, so slide 15, transforming the council to 2021. You'll be familiar with a lot of this. So £80 million savings target agreed in 2018. The proposals were agreed by County Council in November 2019 to give us the time to implement those. So there are no new savings proposals to consider as part of this budget setting process. But as I said earlier, the impact of those proposals is reflected in the numbers in the appendices that you will see. Consultation on those proposals, detailed public consultation has taken place where it's been required. And we'll continue to closely monitor the progress of T21, given that it does extend out, I think, in some departments until 22-23. So there's quite a considerable tail on that programme. Moving on to slide 16, also covering transformation to 2021. As we've said, some of the scale of the programme, particularly in adults, health and care and children's services, is quite significant. And therefore we've had to put aside money to cash flow those savings in the interim period, and that's been built into the medium-term financial strategy for some time. One of the impacts, though, of COVID is that that's obviously added a further delay to the delivery of some of those proposals. So within that overall 210 million, I think there's around 35 to 38 million also associated with the delay due to COVID-19. So whilst there's still a high degree of confidence that those figures can be delivered, we've got the added complication that they will be delivered alongside developing the savings programme for 2023. So again, quite significant overlapping transformation programmes and savings programmes. Slide 17 is just a reminder of the savings targets that were set for each of the departments covered by policy and resources. The savings proposals were agreed some time ago, so we're not going over those in detail. Slide 18, just some of the key issues for implementation. Within CCBS and corporate services, there's quite good delivery in terms of the expectation that most of them will be achieved in time, and also there was some early delivery which has been contributed to cost of change reserves. Within corporate services, the main area outstanding is planned income streams for law and governance, which has really been delayed as a result of the response to the pandemic. So that's me, and then I'm going to hand over to Felicity.
So hopefully a seamless transfer. Hope everyone can hear me.
Felicity, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Lovely to see everyone. So I emphasise that this year is a quiet budget year. There's not a lot happening in the departmental budgets. I think we have to touch on COVID-19. It has been covered in regular reports to Cabinet, but for both corporate services and for CCBS, there have been some really significant impacts on it. And the fact that both departments have come through this year with our in-year budgets in a pretty reasonable place is testament to the extremely hard work of all the staff in pulling our services through such a traumatic period. We have seen a hit, particularly in CCBS, where we're public facing on many of our services. We have seen an impact on income generation, particularly in HC3S, which has a large reliance on provision of school meals, and obviously schools have been closed for significant tranches of 2020 and now 2021. And that is affecting income from them. And legal services have also been affected in terms of trying to up their income streams for their T21 savings. However, we've done huge amounts of other things, emergency planning support, procurement, supply of PPE, loads of stuff around technology, and management of our built estate have been just some of the things that both departments have managed for COVID and have had to step up hugely and have kept a lid on costs while doing so. So a huge thanks to all those staff who've done that. For 21-22, we are across both departments really focusing on making sure that our income just continues to stand up, because it's so vital for both of us in terms of our ongoing finances. And we're looking at efficiencies right the way across the board to make sure we can keep that balance and we have something up our sleeve if income takes a wobble on any front. So moving on through page 21 to page 22, the proposed revenue budgets for 2021-22 are set out there. And what you have there is the budget for the executive member for commercial strategy, human resources and performance for CCBS. The total CCBS budget is larger, but some of that, or a significant part of that, rests with Councillor Heron, and his budget setting is scrutinised by another select committee. The corporate services revenue budget, so slide 23, is largely made up of the corporate resources numbers, so 37 million there, but you've also got transformation and governance, the customer engagement service and other corporate budgets, and that pie chart just sets out the different slices of budget in terms of their overall totals. And slide 24 shows the balance there of the corporate cash limits and income and recharges, and real emphasis there from the corporate services point of view that income is a major part of what corporate services now rely on for their funding, and that is in no small part to the IBC and the hugely successful enterprise that has become. And then on the left-hand bar there, employees are by far the biggest cost in corporate services, with some other supplies. That varies. That's an interesting contrast actually to Ccbs, which I'll come to in a moment. But Ccbs budget on page 25, that again shows the split down of services, by repairs and maintenance being the biggest of the individual slices, but also significant around office accommodation spend, and perhaps more on that later, and on facilities management. So from the point of view of Councillor Reid's portfolio, that's how things break down. That's what this committee scrutinises. The Ccbs budget in total, in fact, the libraries, when you look at it in total, has the biggest chunk there in terms of about a 10 million spend. And then in terms of property services, FM, transformation and business, the revenue budget, you can see on the right-hand histogram block there, our cash limit there is 21 million of core funding, but the income on that outweighs the core funding. So these areas are more reliant on income than they are on core funding. And if you add recharges into that sort of earned income, we've got, you know, over two-thirds really of our work here is funded through revenue generating, income generating services, and that splits down significantly differently to the way the corporate grouping does, because our employees are a smaller, much smaller part of that, and an awful lot of that funding goes on premises management. There's quite a lot of stuff in that particular budget, and on supplies. So a much more heavily sort of goods centred and infrastructure centred spend within Councillor Reid's budget. And then I just touch on the capital programme because that's the third report in this suite, so that's page 27. And the capital programme is a story that the County Council continuously can be proud of, and no less so in the coming 3 years. I emphasise the 27 million, in fact it will be £30 million for decarbonisation schemes that we have just gained from government grant to be spent in the forthcoming financial year. That is a tremendous boost for our starting point, if you like, on our climate change activities. That will cover solar PV and window replacement largely in schools, and then we are also highly likely now to get a grant for oil-fired boiler replacements as well. So we're delighted to have that ability to spend. The 3-year capital programme will see us spending over 82 million, and if you then add in the 26 million, really pushes that envelope, over 82 million pounds worth of investment, with key expenditure being the 24 million we will now be able to, well, we are spending on the condition of school buildings, largely, as you will see in appendices 1 and 2, or significantly on recladding of scholar buildings, but other things will include boiler replacement there. We are spending, we use a PVI program for, no we don't, we use a loan scheme program for the purchase of operational vehicles for the Hampshire Transport Management. Where possible going forward, those will be electric, and there are obviously some vehicles that gritters don't run on electricity very well at the moment. We can't do that, but all our smaller vehicles, fleet vehicles, will be moving to electric as we go forward. We've got improvements going into the corporate estate buildings, and during the office lockdown we have taken advantage of the relative quiet to move some of those forward over the last year. We're investing in the county farm estate from receipts coming forward from sales of land. We're going to make improvements to Winchester Discovery Centre as part of the library's transformation. £500,000 has been put aside for that. And then we have put aside a third of a million for improvements to the rights of way network. I think there may be more to come as we look at that going forward because of the pressures on it at the moment, but that money is a significant shot for them, and we'll look at replacement bridges style and other sort of rights of way hardware, if you like, but I'm really pleased that we've been able to do that. So so slide 28 is a breakdown of the capital programme, and that is the summary of appendices 1 and 2 in the capital programme report. And the little pie chart to end the presentation at slide 29 shows how much schools condition allocation takes up in our overall capital programme, 3/4 of that, which is a huge investment in Hampshire schools, but almost a drop in the ocean in terms of the overall condition liability within schools. But I would hasten to say that Hampshire's school estate is in a fairly good condition compared to what might be seen nationally. As the County Council, we have continued to invest within that estate. That's the end of this presentation, and now we are over to detailed questions, or back to you, Chairman, to cover the reports.
Lister, thank you very much indeed. Very clear. So that was our capital programme report for CCBS, and sorry, that was the pre-scrutiny item, the revenue budget for culture, communities and business, correct? And now we go into the capital programme report for CCBS, where we have Felicity and Steve Clow. Is that correct?
I think what we...
Mr. Chairman, you've got some questions. Councillor Manns came up first, then Councillor Porter, then Councillor Collins.
Yeah, I can't get them all on my thing. I'm sorry about missing you. Okay, let's start with Councillor Manns.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I really just wanted to emphasise the importance of the grant we've got for decarbonisation schemes from government. I make 2 points about that. First of all, I think we were successful partly because we were up and ready with proposals that could be implemented quickly. And I think this all is a general point when you're trying to persuade government to grant you funding for certain items when they come up with a new scheme. If you've got the plans ready as quickly as possible, you've got a much better chance of getting the grant. And this is what's happened. So I just want to add my thanks to the CCBS team, particularly Steve Clow, for the way in which they were able to move so quickly. The other point I'd make about that particular grant is it goes a bit beyond sustainability, because of course heating costs are an element that schools have to pay themselves out of their revenue budget. And if we can reduce the amount of cost in terms of utility bills, which we can in this case, it means they got just a little more money to spend on teaching rather than maintaining the buildings and paying the utility bills. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Very helpful. Thank you very much, Keith. What other hands have gone up?
You've got Councillor Porter next, Mr. Chairman.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Jackie.
Thank you, Chairman. Very helpful to have a quick run through. Thank you very much indeed. And I just wanted to raise 3 or 4 points. One is the rights of way. I appreciate the huge increase, but I think it could be even bigger. I'm sure that Felicity agrees that the public are getting rather fed up with mud, and we do need to think about that in a way in which we actually make it easier for children to walk through these areas, and small children. I'm just talking in my rights of my point as spokesperson. I've had quite a few people say they've had to end up carrying their children, and we definitely want them to be walking. So that was the first one, but I do appreciate that the number has increased hugely. The second one I wanted to just explore was the threat to the school meals service and the school meals and the likely future costs to it. The third one is customer service. The decision to not have the telephones for a considerable period of time. I wonder if we have looked at our equality duty there, although it's not a protected characteristic not to have IT, it begins to feel rather like it. And the last one I wanted to raise was about SLAs for schools, and whether we believe that the school offer is still attractive, and are we increasing the number of schools that we're offering our SLAs to, or is it a number that's decreasing?
Thank you, Jackie. Felicity, over to you.
Thank you. I will say the obvious, which is rights of way do always get muddy in winter. But I also appreciate that this year has seen more pressures, particularly at the moment, in terms of people who perhaps wouldn't otherwise venturing out. Appreciate that. I'm very conscious of the rights of way sort of state, but it is a good one. You know, we're not in a bad position in Hampshire in terms of our rights of way, and we will keep an eye on the spend. But I also emphasise that we do fund the parishes quite well to maintain their local rights of way as well, and we have teams of volunteers who would normally be out helping us who aren't at the moment, and we are missing them. And when they're back, that will also really help with particularly our vegetation management over the summer period. So we hope we will see them back because they are such a vital part of the way we manage the countryside, and I think we are a vital part of their health and well-being. So there's mutual aid there, and I hope that will soon come back into being. But I take the point about the need to keep an eye on that rights of way spend. The school meals service we are giving every support to. We are looking in every direction in terms of how we can ensure that they stay afloat and doing well. The sign up from schools is very good at the moment. Primary, we have HC3S have most of the schools meals service, and in fact during COVID, because of various factors with some of the smaller private sector providers, some schools have come back to HC3S. We're also producing, I will choose this moment to emphasize it, highly nutritious lunch boxes, despite anything that might be up on social media, and we will continue to do that for schools who choose to engage for those services. So I'm positive about the future of HC3S. A lot of our staff can be furloughed at the moment, so the position isn't dire, but income is obviously hit at the moment. I'm not sure about the customer service. Is that a general comment on Hans Direct, Councillor Porter?
Yes, right. We had quite a lengthy time without a direct phone service.
Is that last summer? Is that where you're referring? Right. Yeah. Okay.
And I wondered whether, although we don't count it as a protected characteristic, whether we think of our non-IT based residents, who I appreciate are declining in number, but nevertheless do exist, and whether we think of them particularly in our equality duty.
Yep. Now that Hans Direct has, I mean, Deborah may want to come in here.
It's restored.
Now that Hans Direct has also been disaggregated across the departments, each department is looking at their ongoing support to all accesses, whether it's phone or other sources, to ensure customer contact is as good as we can get it. So I think that will come under some scrutiny in the course of this year around how departments will deal, and I suspect it will be different for different services, which may also be part of that equalities work, Councillor Porter. And then you mentioned SLAs for schools. I think the SLA offer is still very attractive to schools. I can't give you a number at the moment. There are so many SLAs with schools. There's over 80 SLAs, one way or another, offered to schools. And obviously, take up across those SLAs varies by the nature of the SLA. But the core ones of IT and finance and HR and property services, we still have the vast majority of Hampshire schools signing into those. And if I look at something like HC3S that I know well, we have 40 schools outside Hampshire also signed in, and more who would like to. So I think the position is strong. They do need to continue to adapt to changing customer needs, and I really appreciate that schools have gone through difficult periods at the moment. But I'm not pessimistic at all about the position of the services for schools across the board, and I think they play a vital part in the relations between the county council and the school system.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've had quite a bit of to and froing. Are you happy with the replies you've had?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, in order, going from the top, we've got Councillor Collett.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would also celebrate the decarbonisation grant that we have managed to secure. It's very important work, and we had a presentation on that at the members' briefing. The questions I have, I think, are probably more for Rob than Felicity. I have three. First of all, on page 7, you mentioned the £50 million that we still need to close the gap in terms of COVID costs. I'd just like to ask whether the 24 million you mentioned on page 9 page 10 is towards that £50 million, leaving a £26 million gap, or is that a separate thing altogether? Do you want me to do all three questions in one go? Or
it might be easier. Rob, how do you want these questions all together, or do you want to do them separately?
Individually, otherwise I shall forget them in the meantime. So that 24 million extra tranche of COVID funding plus the 8 million that we receive for council tax support, all of that will go towards the 50 million gap that we've got.
So the gap is now around 18 million.
It's obviously very different to that because we're updating the figures based on the information we've had from districts, but yes, it's compared to that position, those two grants would go towards that 50. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Second one is on page 9. I think it's just a matter of clarification. You mentioned the council tax increase of 4.99% being 3% for social care and 2% for core council tax. And then you say an additional 1% will generate 7 million. I presume you're not saying that it will be a 6% increase. You're just explaining what those elements will generate.
That's correct. So the extra 1% flexibility that we've been given gives us 7 million compared to our previous forecast.
Okay, thank you. The final question is member grants. It's mentioned in the covering report. At the moment, they've been supplemented to a 10,000 grant pot for each member because of the COVID challenges that we're all trying to help with. A decision from long ago means that the grant pot will be 5,000 in the next financial year. Is that the case in this budget, or has that in any way been changed?
Keith, do you want to come in here, Keith?
Yeah. I think the best thing I can say, Adrian, at this stage is we're looking into this. We're conscious of the point you made. It's one of those situations where we made a decision some years ago to bring it down to 5,000, and then on a yearly basis we've topped it up for various different reasons. We're looking into exactly how we move forward in this area, bearing in mind COVID, for instance, which is obviously one of the reasons why we upped it to 10,000, which I think has been fairly popular, not only popular, but very useful to people. So I'm in the process, literally as we speak, of seeing exactly the way forward for that. So I'm sorry I can't give you a definitive answer at the moment, but I want you to know that this is something that we are looking at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman.
That's it, our officer being involved in that. Thank you very much. And going next down is Councillor Adam Carew.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm also delighted to see the 24,000 put aside for condition of school buildings. The more energy efficiency we get into these places and solar PV on top, the better. However, I've literally, just before this meeting, was listening to Radio 4, and they were saying that due to COVID, there's now a huge question over whether one of the key things, air tightness, is actually that desirable. Air tightness is absolutely critical to condition of buildings from an environmental point of view, but of course so is fresh air. And in particular, now with the spread of COVID, I'm just anxious that nothing is actually spent until we put the COVID factor into this equation, because it's important that that's taken forward. I don't know if there are any easy answers now, and this is not a discussion about environmental ventilation, but I'm just anxious in case it does have a spending implication. Thank you.
Was that more a statement than a question there, Adam?
Yes, although a reassurance that that will be looked into and taken into account would be helpful. Thank you.
Anybody can reassure Councillor Carew in this?
Hopefully I can reassure Councillor Carew that I would expect Steve Clow to be absolutely on the ball in terms of those contrasting challenges. I don't know if you want to briefly come in,
yeah,
whether you'd like him to come in, Councillor Glenn.
I can come in, Councillor Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a point very well made, and I think it's something we have increased ventilation rates in buildings which do have mechanical ventilation. We've encouraged all buildings and offices in particular to increase ventilation simply by opening windows. But one hopes that, I think the comment I really want to make is that it takes time to plan and deliver any significant building improvement work. And inevitably, we might see some regulatory changes associated with that over time. And one hopes that the kind of current danger of COVID will reduce significantly. Because like Councillor Carew said, there's a real dichotomy, isn't there? There's a real challenge between keeping the ventilation open in a building and then reducing the heat that it uses and the electricity and the power that it uses to operate. So I think what I'd like to reassure Councillor Carew is that we've been taking steps in the short term. We'll wait and see what happens in the medium to long term in terms of the regulatory framework, whether we have to change that. But one hopes that with the vaccination, etc., that we'll be able to return to be able to making buildings more airtight than less, which in the long run makes them more energy efficient. So certainly something we're taking into account, Chairman. So thank you.
Steve, thank you very much, Steve, and welcome to the meeting. Just before I bring in the next question, I presume, Felicity, you just basically went through item 7 to item 8 in a seamless way. Is that correct? Okay.
I did, yes.
Did we cut off Steve Clow from a presentation?
No.
We didn't.
No. I the last two slides reference the capital programme reports. So the slides that Rob and I presented you with went through both the revenue budget report and the capital report, and you're now free to take questions across all of them, I think.
Okay, so Steve hasn't been up all night doing his presentation rehearsal and being basically forgotten, right?
No, thank you, Chairman. I'm here to support support Felicity as I can. For example, like the last question where I can respond in more detail.
Do that to you, you know that. Right, Peter Latham, please. Councillor Latham? We'll come back to Peter. Okay, Mike Westbrook, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. My first point refers to, I think it's page 17 of the report, and we talked about members' devolved budgets, and in the report it states obviously 8,000 was increased to 10,000, which I personally thought was a very good idea, and enable us to support community groups assisting vulnerable residents affected by COVID restrictions. In October, we were asked to consider using some of that budget towards provision for Hampshire's vulnerable children and families, effectively to help those who weren't provided for free school meals during the school holidays in October, as a result of a government decision which, after a bit of pressure from Marcus Rashford, was turned around. But I did ask the grants team for information on the amount that was provided, because obviously councillors had a choice up to about 2,000, I think it was suggested to put into that pot towards like a central pot to help, children and families. And I just wondered if we could get at some stage, get something back to find out how that money was distributed, the additional money we would have put in, and how it would affect areas. For example, in Basingstoke, how that pot was distributed to families within Basingstoke area, or north of Hampshire anyway. I'd like to know if we could have that information at some stage, because I have asked for that. It's not very clear. It's gone into a central area for distribution. So that's my first point. My second point really
Mike,
is...
Stop right there, Mike. I'll bring you back in again on your second point, okay? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Right. Felicity, is that your area?
No. So I'll pick that one up, Chairman.
Thank you.
Yep. So I'm pretty certain we have produced a statement along those lines. So I shall make sure that I follow that up with Deborah, and we'll issue something to committee members.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that, Rob. My second point is it's a bit of it's actually picked up in the Serving Hampshire report in agenda item 9, but it refers to CCBS, and as it seems appropriate at this juncture as we've got Felicity with us to ask the question now rather than wait till later. So it talked in about the external income of CCBS has fallen to 27.7 million in compared to the 35 million reported at the same point in the previous year. And it goes on to say that a new commercial strategy has been developed by the department to provide mitigation for this shortfall. And I'm guessing that could probably be in a worse position now as with the further lockdown. I wonder if Felicity could tell us a bit more about what that new commercial strategy is to try and to alleviate that.
Right. To whom would that belong?
So that does belong to me. So we're working, we've obviously got an awful lot of services that generate income within the department, both in large quantities where Steve's property services division really pull in a lot of income around some of their works, including the some of the big contracting and procurement frameworks. And then also a number of smaller services like the outdoor service and the countryside services that have smaller income streams overall, but they're very vital to those individual services. And it's the latter areas where we are working to increase the commercial acumen of the management and the service generally to ensure that we're sort of performing at the same levels that I'd expect the private sectors to perform in terms of our commercial solutions, but with a public sector twist to it. And that's so important in terms of the way we provide services to customers. So that will, I think, really begin to impact into our T23 savings, which we're obviously not going to cover here. But a lot of the drop in external income last year was related to HC3S, 28 million odd was HC3S. Interestingly, our AMPR, where we saw a big dip in income, the car parking income in the country parks in the early part of the COVID lockdown, and we have now fully made up that income lost because of increased use of the parks as we've moved forward. So that shows really, I think, the swings and roundabouts. And although our outdoor service has lost significant income this year because we just haven't had school residential visits, the approach we have taken to the residential school sector, where we gave immediate refunds in full, and where we have offered refunds or new bookings, has gone down extremely well with schools who weren't treated in the same way across all their outdoor education provision. And I think that's going to stand us in very good stead with the Hampshire and wider schools network as we move out of COVID into future residential activity. So it's a generic small service-based commercialisation, if you like, in terms of business acumen.
Is it also worth saying, Felicity, that some of those fees and charges losses will be covered by the reimbursement scheme that the government has brought in? So we are making those claims on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike, back to you.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chairman.
You've finished and you're happy? Okay.
Yes,
right,
thanks.
now, Councillor, right, I've seen hands come up and come off again, so we're back to Councillor Porter. If you're happy to wait, we'll do Councillor Gibson. Andrew?
Thank you. Sorry, I had to come off mute. Just a quick question for Felicity. I think it's brilliant that you've got the 27 million for the decarbonisation strategy, and it's really hard work getting money out of government, and the 24 million for improvements. Can I just ask, the 82 million investment programme, is that, are these government grants included in that, or is that a capital investment from Hampshire County Council's reserves?
Steve, could I let you do that break?
Yeah, the simple answer to that, Councillor Gibson, is yes. So that £82 million includes over this next financial year and the following 2 years, and it includes an anticipation of further government grant for schools condition assessment. So there is an element of local resources, but I would say the significant majority is anticipated government grant. But I would definitely support what you've said about the one-off decarbonisation grant, which is actually being added to this year's capital programme because it has to be delivered at speed. So I'm delighted. That really made my Christmas, I have to say, getting that funding. But just to confirm, the 82 million includes government grant going forward.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Steve, can we just clarify? I think Councillor Gibson was wondering if the 82 million includes the 30 million Salix grant, which I don't think it does, but that's your...
No, that is in this financial year. We're adding it to the 2021 programme, and it probably was a little bit of, the way I laid out the slide was to say the decarbonisation is added to this year's programme, and the 82 million is the next 3 years programme. So as Felicity intimated, you can add them together effectively and say that over 4 years there's 100 million plus of investment.
Thank you. Back to you, Andrew.
No, that was all I wanted really to know. I mean, in the past we've been very generous with investments in building new schools out of our own capital budget. I suppose with COVID we're having to be a bit more cautious. That was all.
Yeah. No, I can reassure you that I think there is no county council capital funding being spent on schools. It's all government grant.
I think you're doing a great job, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
As we all do. Thank you very much, Andrew. Now, Peter Latham, your hand's gone up and down, like a yo-yo. Okay, are you back in on this issue?
I hope so. Well, I think so. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I got cut off, but I'm back on now. My main questions were actually put by Councillor Collett, so so they've already been answered. I might, Jonathan, come into debate when you decide we're going into debate. But I don't think I've got any questions on any of the reports at this stage.
Okay, right. Okay, we'll do that. Thank you very much. Jackie.
I can't tell quite whether this is debate or
it's all right.
part of a question.
Just go ahead.
The question is about rural broadband, actually. And the budget in 2021 is 307, and the budget in 21-22 is 130, so £1,000. And I wanted to know why that is such a dramatic decrease in that figure. And also at the same time, just raising the issue of the gigabit scheme that County Council is supporting, which I presume is through the capital budget, Felicity, for the £1 million that's carrying on to March the 31st. And how that works, bearing in mind that the public is so dependent at the moment on schemes such as we're using here. And I just wanted to know how that follows through. And the second one is, there's actually, in contrast, the Gypsy and Traveller sum has gone up quite dramatically in revenue between £29,000 and £39,000. And I wondered, is there something that the County Council's doing for Gypsy and Traveller sites that hasn't been necessarily documented elsewhere?
Thank you. Felicity, is that your department?
Thank you for the curveballs, Councillor Porter. The rural broadband continues to be a challenge for us. The drop is around the fact that rollout of the phase we're in currently is coming to an end. So Openreach are looking to wind down or finish, I think that'd be a more productive way of putting it, finish the current rollout. The paper will be coming in due course to look at how we engage as a county council with future initiatives around rural broadband. But that's why that funding stream is reducing at this point, because we are coming to the end of a first process. And what we now do, because of the gigabit vouchers, we point communities towards the government scheme. We're not putting in any county council funding around that now. So there will be a new scheme coming forward, and I think if I can ask that we wait for that report, which will be a full update on how the programme's going, then that probably takes me off the hook in terms of trying to give you detailed breakdown right now. And then in terms of Gypsy and Traveller, I have to admit I haven't got much idea why that's gone from 29 to 39. I suspect it might be something to do with inflation, but I will have to come back to you on that to clarify.
Thank you. It's just useful to know, because obviously the progress of the gigabit scheme has been slowed significantly by the inability for people to contact them. And I have to admit, I have to declare an interest there because I am on a registered scheme at the moment, but as are probably about 50% of my division. And I just wanted to try and clarify really where Hampshire County Council's support, which has been good up to now. I'm just concerned that it looks like it's disappearing from that number.
Okay, so that will come forward in the search report.
Thank you.
Are you content, Councillor Porter?
I look forward to hearing a little bit more about this because I think it's such a vital part of what the County Council has done, and they really have spurred on this council to achieve a good level of broadband, but we still have so many people that are sitting at meetings who are not able to communicate properly in those meetings, and as a result of their poor broadband. And Winchester District is one of the least covered by that.
Okay, all right. Councillor Manns, you coming in on this subject?
Yes, I just wanted to agree with Councillor Porter. Rural broadband is vital. I think my division is the one that's got the least coverage in the whole county. So I have to declare an interest every time I make a comment about it. It is vital. I've made this point to a number of ministers over the last year or so, that in rural areas it's almost more important than in urban areas that you get adequate coverage because of all the things you now have to do online. So yes, I won't go into the finance. It's hugely complicated to pay back amounts for a greater take up of broadband in the first phase or the phase that's just coming to an end. The way that's given back to us, in some cases not given back to us, it is complicated, but I can assure you that I do my very best, as we all do, to ensure that government step up to the mark and actually deliver what they say they're going to in terms of the statement made by successive culture, media and sport ministers.
It's difficult to keep up with it, I agree, but therefore it's a bit disappointing to see that number drop quite significantly on the revenue budget when actually so much work could potentially be done. But I do realise it's not the County Council's direct responsibility, but certainly an enabler. It has been a really useful service.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to hear the leader and yourself, Councillor Porter, in agreement. It means that we're chairing this meeting properly. Right. Okay, right. Councillor Tennant, you're up.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my query is actually around the same topic, but not rural, because I think these video calls that we've been having at the council is highlighted a problem with broadband in urban areas as well as rural. So I've been struggling where I live with a decent connection, and I've been fortunate enough to been able to upgrade to a faster scheme, but it's only slightly faster. So I've been talking to, I've forgotten the officer now, I think it's Glenn something or other.
PC.
Yeah, thank you. And I was hopeful to get residents in my division onto the gigabit voucher scheme, but it turned out that we're not rural enough in our part of the areas. So really what I want to say is that I think we need to pay attention not just to rural communities, it's every community. The FTTC, so that's fibre to the cabinet, existing in quite a lot of, in fact, most urban communities, but not FTTP, fibre to the premises. After an upgrade, I'm only getting 13 megabits per second, which is only just fast enough for this video call. And that's the same for many residents in my division. So we really need an improvement, fibre to the premises. So what I would like to say is please, please, please do not just concentrate on rural broadband, it's broadband for everybody. We should be, instead of looking at rural and urban, we should be looking at what is acceptable for individuals to be seeing as a broadband bandwidth. And I don't think 13 megabits per second is acceptable. It should be more than 30 megabits per second, and even that is slow today.
Okay, of course, the technology moves really fast, Councillor Tennant, and I basically, when we talk about the rural broadband, we are talking about the bits that are hard to reach. It's getting it out to the areas where, frankly, you know, they're sparse housing and they're just able to get the broadband out there. But I'm quite certain that it's the County Council's intention to improve what we've got so that we keep pace with the technology. I'm not answering it for you, it's just my own opinion. Okay. Right. Does anybody want to reply to Councillor Tennant, or are we have to leave that hanging in the ether?
Just to advise Chairman that the leader wants to go.
Yeah, I see that. Go ahead, Keith. Muted. Can't hear you, Keith.
Sorry. Councillor Tennant's right. I think when we're talking about rural broadband, in many cases we're talking about the very rural areas that get perhaps 1 or 2 megabits or nothing at all. But your point about the quality of the service over the whole county when it comes to us increasingly using it for occasions such as this one is also absolutely right. To me, the solution is to go after getting a fibre optic cable to the front door of everyone's house. And to start off with, I've said for a number of years now that we need to ensure that any planning permission that's given for a new dwelling has as it a requirement that happens. It happens in some parts of the county better than others, but that is, you're absolutely right, that must be the aim of everything we do. Sadly, the delivery of that is largely outside our hands. So what we must do is all work together to ensure we put pressure on those delivery parts of the system, such as Openreach, to deliver what I think is increasingly as essential for every individual, every family, in the same way as they have running water and electricity.
Councillor Tennant, you want to come back on that?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's very helpful. I've been for many years struggling to get the motorway through West End resurfaced so that we get a quieter motorway, and dealing with organisations like Highways England has been really difficult. Now I'm trying to speak to Openreach, and that is proving to be very difficult. I would really appreciate your help with this, because they're not replying to me. And I need to speak to them, because I saw that the Prime Minister was in Bolton just before Christmas at the Openreach, one of the Openreach, maybe it's the Openreach headquarters. They've taken on thousands of employees because they want better broadband coverage, 80 to 85% coverage of the whole of the country, I think in the next 5 years. So I can see that something is happening, but it's really difficult to get involved in that and to indicate to people that hey, there are lots of places in urban communities that are not getting sufficient bandwidth.
Okay, Bruce, can I ask you, who is it that's not replying to your request for help?
It's Openreach. I can't even get a name. I've scoured their website and I found a form that I filled in and asked them to get back to me. They promised that they would get back to me within 5 days and haven't. So right. I haven't even got a name.
Okay, look, I can see the plea for help. I mean, the county council works for everybody, as you know. I would have a conversation with the executive member who's in charge of this area and say, look, I'm having problems. Could you please use your gravitas, your influence to get a reply out of these people? And then we'll just take it upwards. We'll take it up to the leader, chief executive. But these people should be replying to help to councillors.
Councillor, again, if it's any help to you, you might like to consider having Openreach in front of your committee.
What a good idea, Louise.
Yes. Thank you. That is an excellent.
Yes from you.
I certainly would appreciate that.
I'm not trying to shuffle responsibility sideways, but it's worth a try. It's worth a try. And I will certainly personally listen in to any a question and answer service you have as a result.
Okay, we'll treat that as an action. And congratulations, Keith.
Thank you very much, Leader. That's very, very much appreciated.
No, touche, Keith, because I think not long ago I basically forced your hand in a certain item and you've now forced mine. So well done. Right. Right. Okay. Right. We are in debate. Okay. So Roger Huckstep. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was just a suggestion for Councillor Tennant. I found getting information out of OpenReach, yes, is difficult, but you must remember that Glenn Pesey is, as it were, embedded with OpenReach. And I think you'll find if you ask him the questions to OpenReach, you can keep badgering him until you've got an answer. That's an interim solution, I suppose, until we get OpenReach in front of us now and say, come on, Mr. OpenReach, be open.
And I will say to you, Bruce, if we have trouble getting them to our table, we'll put you in charge, okay?
Thank you, I appreciate that. I've done an awful lot of research on this over the past month.
Right.
Chairman, if I could finally say that there is a broadband item being proposed for the March meeting, which Glenn Pesey is going to give us an update not only on the existing voucher scheme, but also the new one that's coming in, so that he will be at our meeting in March, and it is listed on the work programme.
Excellent. And I think what we'll try and do is we'll try and get broadband to come to it.
I'll have a word with Glenn.
Absolutely. And if we get stonewalled, then we'll just take it uphill, okay?
Okay.
Right. Keith, did you want to come in?
I could now leave the meeting as I have another one to go to.
Thank
you probably have enough from me already.
No, always happy to hear from you, Keith. You know that.
Right.
Right. Thank you very much, Leader. Thank you very much. Now, are we back to Andrew, Peter Latham? Your hands up now.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been talking about items 6, 7 and 8, and effectively for debate, we are being asked to approve the revenue and capital budgets for P&R to go to Cabinet and the Leader for approval.
That's correct.
Firstly, I'd like to say that with regard to COVID, I believe the Council was correct in setting aside the costs and expenses of COVID as a separate issue to the normal finances of the Council. In November, the sum was 50 million, which was the shortfall that we were short. And that is a figure which obviously is changing as COVID changes, but it's heartening to see that that sum of 50 has been brought down now as a result of government funding which came through in the review, which brings it down as at now to 18 million. I think we all worried that we would get support from government, but it's heartening to see that it is coming through, and hopefully that deficit of 18 will continue to come down as we move forward into 2021. So that I think is good news. In terms of our budgets for P&R, I can see that in both P&R, in terms of corporate resources and Ccbs, both of them have underspent this year. Both of them are now saying confidently that they will achieve the savings that were required to achieve 2021, and that therefore money, as I see it, will therefore be going into the cost of change reserves for this department for the future. We've heard a lot about sustainability of the Council in the medium term, and I'm not going to prophesy in any way as to our sustainability for the future, other than to say up to 2021 this department will achieve its savings, and it's particularly heartening to see that they are already looking forward to 23-24 to deal with budgets and savings in that period as well. So looking as far as P&R is concerned, I think we can definitely approve these revenue budgets. We could hardly do anything else, and they are a testament to the good service we've received from our council officers over the year. So I support the recommendations in all three.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure that's heartily welcomed by all, I hope all, but certainly most of the members of the committee. Thank you very much for that, Peter. Councillor Gibson.
Oh.
Was that a legacy?
So sorry. Yeah, sorry. It was back to the broadband thing. It's always a bit frustrating hearing people talking about the broadband. I mean, the CEO of Openreach is Clive Selley. I worked with him a lot when I was the director of BT, and you know, it's all well and good us sitting there saying broadband ought to be better. Let's knock on the door of Openreach, but in actual fact, they're just a private company, and it's not financially viable in many cases to do fibre to the premises without sort of government impact. So, you know, I mean, I think some of this business about knocking on Openreach door is a little bit ingenuous because, you know, I mean, they basically are a commercial company. The issue is does the government want to make significant investment in broadband or not? And that's where it all is. I mean, why should a private company, and I'm a shareholder, lose money just so that people can have better broadband? I mean, obviously it's important that everybody has better broadband, but it's not for the shareholders of BT to pay for the national interest. So I think there's a bigger debate here as just how serious the government is in getting us all wired up. And COVID has really exposed the importance of broadband. And we need hundreds of megs each because the requirement for broadband is increasing all the time. But Clive is actually driving a massive investment program at the moment, which you may not be aware of, in the backbone of the network. But it does need some investment. Thank you. Sorry,
Clive. Who's Clive?
Clive Selley. He's the CEO of Openreach.
Oh, thank you. Okay, interesting opinion. I still think it's a great idea to have Openreach at least come and listen to what we've got to say.
No, agreed.
Okay, and we might keep that sort of conversation going on an annual basis until we have the perfect computer system throughout Hampshire. Now, to go back to the comments made by Peter Latham, let's just keep that debate going whilst there are hands going up. So, Councillor Collett.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to say I very much agree with what you're planning to do with broadband. Won't add any more to that because I think the correct things are being done. And I'd also like to appreciate the fantastic work that our officers do with the cards that they're dealt, and the logic of the way they go about things is to be absolutely commended and appreciated. But in a while, you're going to take us to a point where we need to vote on the recommendations to go forward from today's meeting.
Yeah.
Sorry? Yeah. And that's something I won't be able to support. This budget includes, although not a lot has been made of it, this budget does include a further 80 million, as Rob told us earlier on, of budget cuts that will be identified and implemented over the next 2 years. We've already had significant reductions in services across the county over the past 10 years. What started out as an economic rescue package in 2010 has become an ongoing austerity package of public service reductions, which hasn't stopped. It's still carrying on. So therefore, I will need to vote against the recommendations when we get to that point, and I wanted to explain why. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Anybody else want to say something about the recommendations that we're going to be approaching shortly? Right. Well, thanks very much for that, Adrian. I don't see any hands up. I think we would consider the questions and debate over. So, Louise, can we go to the poll? And we're talking about that this committee supports the recommendations being proposed to the executive member for policy and resources. Is that correct? Yeah.
You should now receive a card for you to vote.
Right. Do we just go ahead now?
Yeah, if you can submit.
Everybody
submit your vote,
okay with
thank
the
you.
system? Good. Okay. Right. Ten votes. Is that us? 10 people?
There's 14 members, so but we do have a majority, so I think the recommendation is carried if no one else wants to cast.
Has everybody voted? Anybody not being able to?
Councillor McNair Scott has put a hand up, so whether
I haven't been able to vote.
So do you want to verbalise your vote?
Yeah, no, I support the recommendation.
So you're a 4. Okay.
I'm a 4, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else having difficulty voting on the system?
I think Councillor Crew's also got his hand up.
Councillor Carew?
Okay, but we do have a majority, so we can say
same problem, Chairman.
Right. So are you 4?
Yep.
Okay. Just in case there was any doubt. Okay. That helps that. Right. Well, thank you very much. That has now passed.
So the recommendation is carried.
Thank you. All right. And we now press done, correct?
Yeah. I'm just going to launch the second one. So item 7, the Select Committee supports the recommendation.
Do you want to take your hand down, Councillor Carew? We'll just go on. Okay, okay. And the Select Committee supports the recommendations being proposed to the executive member for commercial strategy, human resources and performance. Please vote for, against or abstain. Yeah, I'll come to you, Anna. Right. You need to have a placard, actually. Right. Do I assume, Anna, that you are you for this, Anna?
I'm for.
Okay, leading the witness there. And Councillor Carew, have you been able to vote?
It's hard to tell, Chairman, because when you submit the vote, it doesn't tell you whether you've actually voted or not. So I've submitted the vote. Whether it's gone in or not, I can only guess from my end.
Okay, well, we won't take you to vote
confirm
twice.
that we've got 13 votes, Chairman. So we have received your vote, Councillor Carew. So we've got a majority of to support the recommendations. So the recommendation is carried.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And on to number 3.
Just bear with me.
Wait for it, Anna. Right.
And so the last one, item 8, that the Select Committee supports the recommendations being proposed to the Executive Member for Commercial Strategy.
Okay, the Select Committee supports the recommendations being proposed to the Executive Member for Commercial Strategy, Human Resources and Performance. Please vote. And Anna, if you'd like to tell us how you're voting. 4, I presume?
4.
Yeah, okay. And that looks like everybody. Is that everybody, Louise?
We've got 13 votes, but we do have a majority for to support the recommendations being proposed.
So that is now carried. And you can press done. Okay, well, that was a very interesting debate on the budgets. Okay, we're now on to the next item, which is item 9, Serving Hampshire Half-Year Performance Report, which are pages 73 to 114. And I take it we have Deborah Harkin with us.
Good morning, members. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm going to ask my colleague Antonia Perkins to introduce the report for you members as she put it together, and she has a presentation to share with you. Thank you.
So I'd like to welcome you, Deborah, Antonia, and Peter Andrews, I presume, is with you.
Yes, I am.
Right.
To support paragraphs 22 to 24.
Thank you. Okay, off you go, Antonia.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I check, are you happy for me to run through the presentation as it is in ModGov, just as Rob Carr did?
We got that agreement last time from the committee, so I presume they're happy with that.
Thank you. So starting on slide 2, this item provides an update on the County Council's performance during the first half of 2021 against the Serving Hampshire Strategic Plan, so that's performance up until September of last year. This report will be considered by Cabinet in February. So I'm sure the strategic plan is familiar to you all, but just to recap, it contains the 4 strategic aims set out on slide 2, as you can see before you. The report gives the update on performance based on information provided by departments. As you'll be aware, the management of performance and day-to-day monitoring takes place within each department. So several of the topics which arise in this report fall under particular exec members and therefore are subject to scrutiny by other county council committees in addition to yourself. As well as that, several areas of performance are reported separately. This includes financial performance, as you received the reports from Rob earlier in this meeting, and safeguarding matters. And you'll be aware as well from earlier conversation that the County Council's response to the pandemic is also reported separately and regularly to Cabinet. So the judgments in this report are pulled together and informed by several different source information. Departments report against a core set of performance metric, and for each metric, departments are asked to provide the most up-to-date performance information alongside a risk rating. Directors also provide information on key achievements, as you'll see in the main report, often covered in press releases and so be familiar to you, as well as any areas of risk that they want to be highlighted. In recent years, Cabinet also took a decision to place greater emphasis on the result of external source of evaluation. So performance is not just based on what departments feel about themselves, but also data and what others claim of us independently. And those are set out in more detail in Appendix 1 of the report. Moving on to slide 3, the work is currently underway to refresh the current strategic plan. That runs until this year, and then the new plan will run from 2021 to 2025. Work will be undertaken alongside that to revise the corporate performance management framework of this report is part. The new plan will consider the wider policy landscape that we're in at the moment, as well as the strategic priorities identified by the Hampshire 2050 Commission of Inquiry, and clearly also reflect activity support Hampshire's recovery from the pandemic. The new strategic plan will be considered by Cabinet following the elections and the performance management framework agreed at the same time. Moving on to slide 4. This slide provides a summary of the performance judgment for Q1 and 2 in 2021. Overall, the assessment based on all the source information is that performance remains good. And this is particularly significant achievement given the severe pressures and constraints caused by the pandemic, alongside as well the challenges and uncertainty caused by the UK exiting the European Union and the impact that has potentially had on services. The majority of performance measures reported by departments were either shown as low or medium risk, and a small number were identified as high risk, which I'll come on to on the next slide. Nearly half of the targets set by departments were met or on track to be met as well. So just moving on to the next slide, 3 areas were reported by departments as high risk, and these are directly because of the impact of COVID. The 3 areas are the uptake of school meals, the lowering of Ccbs external income of that period, and the increase in the percentage of waste landfilled in HWRCs. Felicity commented earlier on the school meals uptake and the Ccbs external income. And it's important to note that this report details performance in Q1 and 2 So the picture has moved on since then, in particular regarding school meals. As you'll see, at the beginning of December, the uptake of school meals was 52.5%, so which is up from the 28.8 lower percent in Q1. Moving on to slide 6. This slide is an extract, the performance highlights, which are also set out in the main report, and again in further detail in Appendix 2. I don't intend to run through these in detail, but clearly very happy to talk to comments or questions on any specific areas after the presentation. The next slide, on slide 7, you will be aware that the County Council's equality programme is reported as part of the performance updates 6 monthly. So this slide gives some detail on the wide internal programme of work over that particular 6 months to support and encourage conversations about inclusion, with a particular focus around race as a response to the Black Lives Matter movement last summer, as well as setting up the comprehensive offer of health and wellbeing support that's been made available to staff during this unprecedented period, with a particular focus on the safety of Black, Asian and minority ethnic colleagues via a particular toolkit set out for them to assess their own levels of risk. So slide 8, the last slide on the performance elements of the report, just sets out the summary overview. So as detailed earlier, performance is judged to have remained good over this period, despite the challenges and pressures brought by the pandemic and the coming to the end of the transition period for leaving the EU. Good progress also continues to be made to advance the inclusion, diversity and wellbeing work programme internal to the County Council. And just to note there, lastly, that sustained performance is considered to be particularly impressive and testament to the work of staff during the period last year of the first wave of coronavirus. Lastly, you'll see this report contains information on a determination by the local government ombudsman. So I'd like to hand over at this point to Peter Andrews, who will talk you through that section of the report.
Before we do that, thank you very much so far. Councillor Porter, did you want to ask a question for clarification on this? The report so far?
Yes, please.
Right.
Yes, please. We are looking at this today. I'm having to use 2 computers. So I'm taking part in the meeting, and also I'm looking online at the presentations. And I wondered what the public's experiences of this meeting are, if we're asking us to look at the documents as a ModGov statement on ModGov separately, rather than on the screen. So the public's YouTube experience of this meeting would not be the same as our experience of this meeting. I understand why we're being asked to look at the documents on ModGov, because it's less risk, to be honest, less hassle for the presenters. But I wondered if we are actually offering the public the same experience that we are having of this meeting.
Councillor Porter,
because those slides won't necessarily be there in the experience.
Councillor Porter, I thought this the minute we agreed to look at our mod.gov. I thought, if you're an outsider looking in, you are not going to get the same input. And I prefer seeing them on the screen, quite frankly. I do prefer them because every now and again I kind of lose track of which page we're on, unless I'm told, because when you're chairing, especially, you're looking everywhere. Our hands going up. Does somebody want to talk about, it's quite tricky.
I think I'm increasingly aware of it as this meeting's going on, and also we are, I'm running 2 computers. If I'm trying to reduce my carbon, I should be running 1, and also if it's a performance, it's a customer-facing subject. This, and I'm just very concerned about it.
No, I have to admit,
that's no pressure. That's no pressure on the individuals doing the presentation. That's about a principle.
We'll have to carry on with what we're doing, but I think we should bear that in mind for all meetings in future. I think Louise might take that on board, and we'll let's say point that out to, was it Deborah Harkin, who's a pretty senior person, and we'll I think that's the right way forward. personally,
Thanks, Councillor Glenn. Could I just confirm to Jackie that the presentation that Antonia is giving is actually published on the website, so the members of the public would be able to view it at the same time?
I understand that. So but how do they get? So unless it's actually in the YouTube presentation of this meeting, they would have to flick backwards and forwards as we are doing. I just wonder whether, for clarity, I think it's something that needs to be explored a little bit more. Thank you, Councillor Glenn, for taking this matter up.
Yes, thank you very much. Right, thank you very much for that. Antonia, on to Peter.
Thank you, Chair. This just refers to paragraphs 22 to 24 on page 83 of your modern.gov papers and the attached report in Appendix 3 on page 103. Well, the report is issued under Section 30 of the Local Government Act 1974, and the issuing of such a Section 30 report is extremely rare for the County Council and requires the Council to consider the report at a high-level decision-making forum. So, as the complaint relates to an executive matter, in this instance, that is the Cabinet, hence its inclusion in this mid-year performance report. Well, finally, I'd just like to draw your attention to paragraph 24, where members of the committee will note that a number of recommendations within the Ombudsman's report have been all completed, and the Ombudsman has been advised accordingly. Thank you.
Right. Okay. I did have a look at the report, and it was quite interesting. Right. Thank you both very much. I take it you have both finished your presentation, Antonia and Peter. Right. Do we have any comments or hands up on this subject? Councillor Collett.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, thank you, Antonia, for the full presentation. I have a question, and then I'd like to make some comments. Would you like me to do them both in one go, Chairman?
No, let's do the questions, and we'll do comments afterwards. That's okay.
Okay. On the presentation in slide 5, you referred to the fact that more waste had been landfilled because some of the waste treatment processes have been affected by the COVID pandemic. I'd like to understand a little bit more about what those treatments were and how this happened, please.
Who's taking that on? Antonia?
Sorry, Chair, struggling with the mute button then. That's the part of the reason called behind that is because various areas were closed because of COVID restrictions. In terms of the details around the services in particular that are used, I can find out and then come back to the committee after this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Does that mean, Chairman, that things which might otherwise have been taken to an HWRC for recycling were put in the wheelie bin and just part of the general waste stream? Is that the sort of thing we're talking about?
Is that right?
Yes, Chair, I imagine that that's been the case, but I will go back and find out the detail for you.
Thank you.
If you could do that, obviously that's Councillor Collett's question. If you could send that via Louise Pickford, she can let us know as well. Thank you. Right, well, and I'll bring you back, Councillor Collett, for the debate issue. Right? Okay. Councillor Carpenter, question.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I just wondered what outcomes there have been as a result of these actions to ensure inclusivity within the county, particularly regarding the race and home working. I'm obviously aware that there are things we have to do when we're working from home, but I'm not sure of any. I'm not aware of any particular guidance. I just wondered, have there been outcomes for staff through these actions, and will they be coming to us as councillors, maybe?
Antonia.
Thank you, Chairman. So a great deal of work has been done to support staff during the home working period, particularly including support for managers on how to manage teams remotely and how to provide support in that slightly unusual circumstance. Also around the mental health and well-being of staff, and again, support for managers and supporting their teams, and also providing individuals with a great deal of support and resources to use to help them if they're feeling isolated or affected by the pandemic. So there's quite a significant amount of resources available internally to staff to support them whilst they're home working. And also you'll be aware of the IT programme to roll out kits to support individuals to homework effectively at home as well, to improve that experience and their ability to effectively perform when they are working at home. So there's quite a lot of information available to staff to support them. There's quite a lot of forums available on them as well, and managers are very much encouraged to check in with their staff and to monitor wellbeing. We also have regular wellbeing surveys out to staff to find out how they're coping and how they're finding working from home, and also to find anything if there are any suggestions for how the experience could be improved to make them more effective. So corporate management team monitor that on a regular basis. So there is also that facility to support our staff at the time.
Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah, could I just come back? Yeah, thank you very much for that. That's great. I think some advice on ergonomic furniture and things like that is probably in order. I haven't. It may be there. I've just not seen it. Also, I wondered if you could just let me know the effectiveness of these toolkits for our workers from different ethnic backgrounds. How effective have those been? What's been the take up and any feedback really?
The idea with the toolkits is it's very much for an individual to use it and assess their own level of risk, and to then have a conversation with their managers. So it hasn't been compulsory for members of staff. And it hasn't been monitored and reported about particularly. It's more about individuals using that opportunity to have a conversation, identify any risk factors, and then for that to be escalated.
Okay, Fran. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Huckstep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question of clarification, if I may, from Peter Andrews and the Ombudsman's report. And the recommendations. Can I just be clear? There were a set of things that had to be done within 4 weeks and another set in 8 weeks. The report just says the council has accepted our recommendations. Did you say earlier, Peter, that all of those recommendations have been completed?
Yes, they've all been completed. All bar the requirement to send the report to present the report at Cabinet. So obviously that will be completed once this mid-year report goes to Cabinet in February.
Okay, that's good. Thank you very much.
The final one, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay, Roger, thank you very much. Actually, Peter Latham.
Thank you, Chairman. As far as Adrian's question is concerned, I was probably going to ask the same question. Household waste and recycling comes under regulatory, of which I've got an interest. And I am aware of the fact that the aim of the Hampshire Mineral and Waste Plan is to eliminate all waste to landfill by 2030. So this item or paragraph does concern me, Adrian. I don't know the answer to it, but I will find out from regulatory who do. I do know that there have been problems during COVID with regard to waste recycling centres. They have been having difficulty in finding markets for the recycled goods. So I will want to know whether or not the items which should have been recycled are in fact going to landfill. There is another problem that we have in recycling centres, is that because recycling centres can't recycle as well as they could and can't sell, the stockpiles are going up, and this of course is causing concern to residents. So there are a number of issues arising at landfills, at recycling centres at the moment. I know your question, and I will take it up with regulatory and ensure that an answer comes back to you.
Peter, I'll bring you back. Peter, that's very interesting. I think a lot of us are kind of aware that there are difficulties out there, but don't know actually what's happening.
Yeah.
And we need to keep basically our nose clean on the county council. So I presume if this ought to go to a scrutiny committee, and I presume, and I'm happy to be corrected, this would go to ETE scrutiny. Would I be right?
Probably, I think you probably are right, yes.
Then
yeah. If it's any committee, it would be that one, yes.
Well, that's where it should start. I don't think it should just, because if it didn't, I would certainly be recommending it goes onto our work programme, because that'd be something we'd look into. But I think we should give ETE the chance. We should have the ETE chairman here, select committee chairman. Who?
Yes, that's me, Chairman. I am here, and if I may, I'll just comment. We do scrutinise this issue very regularly on ETE committee, and we have a plan to do so again. I mean, on the question of the stockpiles and what's happening to our waste and recycling, we've asked all those questions, and we have had mixed answers. The reality is that the government has an excellent plan for waste and recycling, which was actually published December 2018. But the whole process has been delayed by the pandemic, and we have to accept that has set things back. But it is a good plan, and Hampshire will be a key part of the changes to the system, which will almost certainly include curbside sorting and the collection of food waste and the more efficient processing of the waste into recycled products. So yes, we will be looking at this again later in the year.
Okay. I mean, I try and attend as many select committees as possible. I think maybe if you could alert us to, or your officer could alert us to the next debate on this, some of the members of this committee might like to attend, certainly observe. Okay.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
But get an answer to you, Adrian, as to what your question, regarding your question.
I've lost command here, obviously.
Okay.
Forgotten who was asking what and where. Okay. We're on you, Peter, aren't we? Is that correct?
You were, and I was telling Adrian that I would find out the answer to his question,
yes,
which was to find out the reason for the reduction of services and why it was going to landfill rather than being recycled.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Much appreciated.
Brilliant. Okay. Right. Councillor Porter.
Okay. 2 or 3 things. One is that I noticed that we're doing a refresh of the County Council's plan, and I noticed at the moment that reducing carbon is not part of the current requirements that we put out as our 4 pillars. So I wondered if that's going to be included. The second one is that I noticed that in our accreditation, lots of the excellent accreditations that we've got already actually expired during 2021 or have expired at the end of 2020. What capacity is there in the system to be reapplying for those currently, particularly as those organisations in many cases are that accreditation provides them with what they need to sell their services going forward, for instance, outdoor centres. And the third one is there's an ease of use survey for footpaths. And I noticed the May statement's been put in there, but not the November one. I appreciate this is, again, something that goes to Cabinet, and so it won't necessarily come out in this paper. But I wondered if you've got any up-to-date information.
What was the first one? And
the first one is about carbon. In the very first pages of this report, it describes the outcomes that we want to achieve for Hampshire residents. And despite having reducing the carbon footprint for over a year, it's still not in there as one of the outcomes we want to do. The second one was about
The accreditations and the third was football. I'm just stalling you to give our officer time to get her act together. Right. Thank you very much. And Antonia?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I can assure Councillor Porter that the climate change strategy and ensuring that the strategic plan is reflective of the aims in that will be a key priority in the new strategic plan. It is refreshed every 4 years. So as we get towards the end of the period, it becomes clear that it does need to be refreshed to reflect county council priorities. So yes, just to give assurance that that will be the case going forward when it's put before Cabinet. The second question in terms of accreditation, yes, as you're aware, that this report shows performance up to September last year. So there will be an element of accreditations that are coming towards the end of their lifespan, so to speak, which will be picked up at the next report, which will be summertime and be the full annual report. But a number of those accreditations are going to be key to services in terms of safety and their ability to run operationally. So there will be the capacity to deliver those because they're a key part of the service. But that's clearly a comment as well that I can take back to services and make them aware of a concern about that capacity. And then just lastly, in terms of the footpath, again, it's where this report comes before you slightly after the end of Q2. It doesn't have most up-to-date information as of today, so it wouldn't include the November, the survey of state of footpaths. But again, this will be picked up in the annual report and we'll make sure that information is refreshed and included then.
I imagine, Jackie Porter, you must be happy with those 3 answers. You're happy with that?
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And Councillor Carew, you're the only one. Other hands have come down, so it's just you now. Councillor Carew.
Chairman, thank you. No, Councillor Porter's already asked my question. I had a similar concern about the environment. Thanks.
And basically, has your question, although it might be slightly different, but same subject, you're okay with that? You're okay with the answer?
Providing it does, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can understand that. Okay, Adam, do take your hand down. Okay, thank you. Right. Now back to you, Councillor Collett.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, fascinating report, and it's always good to see the external validation of things that are working out well, and also the achievements set out in the report. And I think a lot of credit needs to go to everyone involved in achieving those things. But I've mentioned this at previous meetings, and it still strikes me very hard. As a scrutiny committee, an overview and scrutiny committee that we're here today to be, the one thing that seems missing from this report, big time, is a list of the challenges facing the County Council in terms of performance, because that's what we should be concentrating our minds upon. What are the challenges? And how do we address them? There are all sorts of challenges facing us, whether it's the, in broad terms, the county surveyor, director of ETE, as he's now known properly, making quite clear that all he's able to do with current resources is manage a declining resource. And he said that 2 or 3 times. He's made that very clear to us. We know from questions that have been asked and answers that have been given in the past, how long it would take to resurface all our pavements in Hampshire, and the massive backlog of work that's storing up that will one day come back and hit us. And the very fact now that we have a policy that our road safety improvements are focused almost entirely on places where people are already being regularly hurt, killed or seriously injured, or even minor injuries, and very little resource available for actually preventing those things in the first place, when many of us can identify those issues. Those are just a few examples of some of the challenges that face us in terms of performance. And I think it's a big gap in this report that we don't have some sort of assessment of the challenges that we face. Otherwise, how can we scrutinise those? How can we try to point everything we're doing in the right direction to get them addressed? Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Collett, I'm very grateful to you, because when I first got involved a long time ago in scrutiny, I was sent up to Birmingham University for a week to actually find out what the scrutiny function was. This was, 10 or so, 12 years ago, and I was on the district council then. And, we were taught really all about how scrutiny should function. And as you continue in your life or career in local politics, and chairing meetings, this sort of thing, you do tend to forget some of the other areas that we should be looking into. So I'm grateful to you for that. Whether others agree with me or not, what you're talking about is actually a pillar of true scrutiny. So I don't intend for us to now go into all the challenges on the hoof, because that would be it wouldn't serve the Hampshire County Council or the public correctly by doing so. But the question is, should we either bring an officer back on that particular subject, or do we set up a subcommittee, which is something we haven't done for years, okay? And so I haven't worked that out yet, okay? So I think the best thing to do is to leave that with myself and the acting vice chairman. And we might send a signal to Antonia here to say, could she start building up a list of challenges serving Hampshire, in the hope that we might need it fairly shortly. Go on. Who's interrupted?
Sorry, Chairman, it's Deborah here. May I come in at this point, please?
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Collett, thank you very much for raising this issue. And I have to say, I agree with you. We have given, I think, let me start with the current performance management framework. So the current performance management framework has, it's slightly flawed, I think, currently, in as much as what we tend to do is to focus on the measures. We focus on the measures that relate specifically to the objectives in the Serving Hampshire plan. That's sensible, that's fine. But what it means is that when we go to departments to ask them to update us on progress, that's generally all we get. So we get the risks associated with the measures, and we get progress against the measures. And what you have just highlighted is exactly what we've been discussing at the corporate management team, because Antonia and I took a report which we discussed at the corporate management team only a couple of weeks ago to say we think that the performance management framework needs to be overhauled for that very reason. So we're not getting sufficient balance and overview across all of the areas of performance. And so what you said is exactly what we're going to be tackling in terms of updating the performance management framework with the new plan. And we would welcome a conversation with this committee once we've got something, sensible drafted that we could come back and share with you for your views. So fully support what you're saying, and we're working on it. So thank you.
Deborah, thank you very much. Thank you for stopping me, because obviously then I think we're all in agreement that that basically we could do better as a scrutiny committee.
Yes.
And I'm sure that's probably the case for all scrutiny committees. We could do better. And I'm very grateful to you. I hope that what you said basically makes Councillor Collett content.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the responses.
And we will do that, please, Deborah. We'll give you all the time you need to, as it were, get your list report together. And the minute you're ready to go for this, please let Louise know. We'll obviously try and book it into our program, our work program, so that we can actually anticipate it. But please liaise with Louise to find out the best time for you to do this.
Thank you very much. Will do. Thank you, Chairman.
Is everybody in agreement with that? Councillor Huckstep.
I'm totally in agreement with that, Mr. Chairman. It's an excellent point that's been raised. I noticed in the work programme there's only one item being flagged for the March meeting, which is the broadband issue, which we've already mentioned this morning. I just wonder whether it'd be possible for Deborah and Antonia to come up with an interim statement on what we've just been discussing for the March meeting, and that might enable you to decide whether or not you need a subcommittee on the subject. suggestion.
No pressure then, Deborah. Right. Look, I apologise for Councillor Huckstep. He's very keen.
We will certainly do our best, but may I come back to you on that, because I don't want to confirm and then let you down on the dates. But we will certainly do our best and pencil that in and confirm with you if we're not able to do it. Let's put it that way. Is that okay?
Are you happy with that, Roger? To let's give them as much leeway as possible.
I'm entirely happy. I did use the word interim.
Yes, I know you did.
Thank you.
All right, that was you, Roger. Thank you for that, Adrian. That was actually quite a salutary lesson for all of us. Okay. Are there any other comments, any more debate on this subject, which is the performance, the Serving Hampshire half-year performance report, which has been very interesting, and I've enjoyed the debate, actually. Roger? Can't hear you.
Sorry, that was finger trouble.
Were you going to say something?
No, the hand went up by mistake. Sorry.
Gotcha. Look, I'm having a tough job as it is, Roger. Please. Right. Okay, well, we'll go to, I don't think we do a vote on this. I think we just go to, am I right, Louise?
That's right, Chairman. It's just for the committee to note the recommendations within the report.
I'll repeat the recommendations. Thank you, Louise. It is recommended that P&R Select 1. Notes the County Council's performance for 2021 to date. Notes progress to advance inclusion and diversity. And C. Note the determination of the LGSCO, which stands for local government something or other. Strategic. I forgot what that stands for.
Chairman, it's the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman.
Why didn't I remember that? Okay, so we'll take it all together. We all agree with the recommendations? Hands up.
Agreed.
Agreed. Right, even those who are not showing their faces, I'll assume you're voting for it, Councillor Porter.
Yeah, agree.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yes.
Okay, and now on to the next item, which is the 8155, the IT update. Simon, and thank you very much to our officers, Antonia, and to you, Deborah, and to you, Peter. And
thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members.
Louise, will you pass on our thanks to our budget officers, because I forgot to thank them when they left, okay?
I will do.
Thank you very much. Right, IT, this is Simon Williams. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Just given Councillor Porter's comments, would you like me to share my screen or just take you through the report on your own pace?
Well, I'll tell you, if you could please, Councillor Porter, that would make my life a lot easier, okay? So let's put it on the screen.
Very well. Can you now see my screen?
Councillor Porter, what would you like to say?
I just said it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right.
You're welcome. Okay, so this is my annual IT update. I'll take you through the report, and obviously you can ask me any questions you want to at the end of that. So the purpose of this report is just to give you that annual update and considers the activities that we've had over the past year and summarises some of the priorities ahead. And the recommendation is that you note this report. There's no specific recommendation for you to agree otherwise. So IT's day-to-day business operations focuses on underpinning the general work of the County Council, as well as leading on major transformational programmes. They include Modern Desktop, or HANSnet Modern as we call it, the Office 365 rollout and our telephony replacement, as well as supporting the development roadmap for our shared services partnership and many other projects as well in support of transformation to 2019 and 2021. IT services has been critical in enabling the County Council to operate effectively during the coronavirus pandemic, including the democratic process as we are seeing today. And this has proven the value of that IT transformation that we have undertaken over the past few years. And it also provides some opportunities for us to reassess the workplace operating model post the pandemic. IT services delivered our transformation to 21 savings target of 2.188 million ahead of March. In fact, that was delivered by October 2020. And IT and data security remains a key focus for us, and we have achieved recertification against all of the appropriate national and international standards, including the Public Service Network 27001 and the PCI data security standards. With regard to the IT finances, you'll see that against the 2019-2020 actuals, there's a significant difference between that and the budget of circa £10 million. That is due to additional funding coming into IT to pay for corporately supported and departmentally supported projects. So you can see there that's nearly £6 million for T19, T21 projects, £1.2 million for the Enabling Productivity Programme, and so on and so forth. In addition, we expect to have changes to our budget going forward into the next financial year. So this is to do with our T21 savings, inflationary growth, the decentralisation of the learning and development budget into IT, and some changes to our reserves. With regard to IT performance, generally we look at business outcomes now rather than traditional IT metrics of system response times, because really IT is there to enable business outcomes. So the following gives you an idea of some of the scale and performance of the IT function. So the IT staffing budget includes 341 permanent FTEs, but we also have, at the time of writing this report, which was in December, 64 active contractors and a further 48 temporary funded posts. The trend of our capacity is reducing over time, and this is partly as a result of our T21 savings and partly as a result of a reduction in project demand. We're also moving away from using contractors to more cost-effective fixed-term staff. The service desk was able to adapt very well at the start of the pandemic and continue to provide a telephony service throughout the period. And this is clearly during a period of significant change for both IT staff and all officers. An increased reliance on portable devices has meant that our support calls have become more complex to triage, and the service desk is receiving just under 8,000 incidents and 2,000 service requests a month. Around 51% of that is raised via self-service. That's up from 36% last year, which is a good news story. And when contacting the service desk by phone, the average wait time is approximately 6 minutes. Overall satisfaction with IT has remained high on a scale of 1 to 5 at 3.81, with Microsoft Teams having the highest rating of those services, and the lowest being the property asset management system. But the committee should note that there is a project underway to replace that service, which is currently in delivery. Despite dipping slightly at the earlier part of the year, all incidents are now resolved within 91% of our incidents are resolved within our service level targets, which is about the same rate as last year. We have a large number of projects on our portfolio. That's slightly dropped over time. We have 68 projects in delivery and a further 43 in mobilisation, which is detailed planning. And we are conducting a review of the outstanding transformation to 21 projects to make sure that they are still required. By the end of the previous year, we had closed 36 projects in 2019, but by the 1st of December, we had already closed 60 projects this year. So we'd almost doubled our delivery of projects this year, which is great. And I'm pleased to update you to say that actually reached a total of 74 projects that we delivered within the calendar year last year. And 49 projects were stopped during planning, demonstrating that we have rigorous checks in place. Of the projects delivered, 82% of them were rated by the project sponsor as either good or excellent. So other activities that we've had over the past 12 months, too numerous to list everything, but here are some examples of the things that we have delivered. So our telephony replacement project replaced our legacy Avaya phone service with Microsoft Teams, which we are here using today, and also implemented a new contact center system replacement. We did a project over the summer called the Remote Working Equipment, and this was where we provided additional mobile devices to staff that didn't have them, as well as other peripherals, so screens, docking stations, mice, keyboard, etc. We actually distributed over 22,000 items to over 6,000 staff in just 8 weeks, which was a real achievement of the team. And we did that in conjunction with our colleagues in facilities management. We deployed the mobile version of Office 365 to replace the old Zen mobile system on staff and members' mobile phones and tablets. We delivered a services portal, which is the central point for which internal staff, schools and third-party professionals can access statutory, traded and free services that the County Council provides. The IT for Partners in Practice solution delivered solutions to help support the new social care operating model. The mobile catering administration project provided devices and connectivity to staff working in H3CS. Payment to providers, this was a portal, it was an in-house development which enabled organisations that provide care to adults on behalf of the County Council to communicate with us. We provided new Wi-Fi in 49 County Council managed care locations, including residential care and nursing homes, which was key for the enabling residents to have internet connectivity. The support plan management system, this enabled staff in County Council residential and nursing homes to record client details through an electronic support plan system. Adults Health and Care mobile forms delivered a form solution using a technology called Corona, which enabled staff to complete electronic forms in the field without returning to the office. We have developed a data strategy and migration roadmap for Adults Health and Care to exploit our new data analytics platform, which is in Microsoft Azure. And the H2ST communications tool provides integration with the gov.uk Notify service, which allows us to send communications to schools, parents and other stakeholders with regard to the home to school transport service. We also delivered numerous projects in support of departmental Transformation to 19 and Transformation to 21 programs. We supported the SAP development program, which underpins the Shared Services Partnership. And we also were, as I've mentioned earlier, reaccredited against several national and international standards, as I mentioned earlier. In terms of the priorities ahead, we are looking to execute the final projects under Transformation to 19 and 21. We are working with departments to help them plan their delivery for savings programme to 2023, including those for IT itself, but we do expect that there will be fewer projects than those for those previous transformation programmes. In July, I took a paper to corporate management team and gained their approval to make some investment in our cybersecurity defence. The paper laid out what our landscape was, some of the evolving risks that we saw within the wider environment, and our recommendations for some investment to maintain a robust level of cybersecurity defence, and those will be implemented during 2021. We're also starting in the early stages of starting the procurement for the replacement for the HPSN2. That's our wider area network and internet connectivity to all HCC offices, 90% of schools and several public sector partners. The HPSN2 contract will end in December 2022. So we are starting procurement now, as there will be a fairly sizable implementation project following that. We will also be supporting the implementation of the new social care systems for children's and adults health and care, and also significant expansion of the care provider portal framework for adults. In terms of Transformation to 21 and Savings Programme to 23, so as I've mentioned, IT was set a target of circa 2.19 million for Transformation to 2021. That was delivered by October last year. They were delivered through a mixture of implementing operational efficiencies and removing surplus posts. We reviewed our commercial contracts and made savings against several of those. We rationalised and modernised our desktop and data center services, which helped us to use less expensive technology, and we benefited from income generation following the expansion of the shared services partnership with the onboarding of the 3 London boroughs 2 years ago. And we also carried over some overachievement against our transformation to 2019 target. In terms of Savings Programme 2023, IT has a target of 2.35 million, and our planning is underway of how we will achieve that. That is the end of the report, Chairman, and I'm very happy to take any questions you or any other members may have.
Simon, that is one of the fastest reports I think we've ever had, actually, so congratulations.
I hope it wasn't too fast.
No, I'm sure even Adrian Collett managed to keep up with that, okay. It's fascinating, okay. Can I just, I'm going to start this off, okay. If you go to the top of page 119, and it's re-accreditation, is that an accolade that we're getting when you were talking about re-accreditations?
No, not so much. Basically, with those re-accreditations, they are certain external standards that we adhere to ensure that we have robust cybersecurity defences. So some of them are mandatory. So the public service network is run by the Cabinet Office, and for certain services where we have to communicate data, we are required to meet those standards with regard to server patching, how robust our network configuration is, and so on and so forth. With regard to payment card industry, if we want to take any kind of payment card payments, credit card payments, for example, debit card payments, then again, we have to adhere to those standards. Otherwise, we are not permitted to do so. So again, we do a penetration test across our IT infrastructure, and then if there's any risks there that we have to remediate, we do that before our submission goes in. And the ISO standards are the international standards organization standard for information security management, and that's our external assurance to make sure that we are managing our IT infrastructure in the most robust way possible.
Yes, that's a pretty full answer. Thank you very much indeed. All right, we'll go to the top of our list. Actually, Councillor Porter, I think you were number 1. Jackie? Right, well,
thank you. And I'm saying I don't think I was first, but I'll take the opportunity. It's a very impressive report, Simon. Thank you very much indeed. And I just wanted to go to the conversation about schools and the upgrade from SN2 to SN3, HPSN3. I'm a governor of a school, and it isn't necessarily the most competitive offer that Hampshire County Council makes to schools. And I wondered if you'd like to comment on that. And the other thing is the H2ST. What's that, please? I don't actually understand that.
That's the Hope to School Transport.
Oh, yes, but what is I don't understand what the system is.
Fine, yes. It's basically a tool that allows us to communicate with users of that service.
Right, so it's separate from the school's standard parent mail type service.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, okay. So my main question, though, is about competitiveness of HPSN3.
Yes, absolutely.
Where we can improve that service to schools and academies.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, the short answer to that is not all networks are the same. So it's important to compare like for like. Often you'll get providers saying that they can provide an internet connection to schools at a much lower cost. That is true, but they won't necessarily be providing the same level of robust security and web filtering that and all the other things that we wrap around that service. So we are blocking millions of malicious connection every hour to schools, and we provide a fully managed service through that. You have things like connection speeds as well. We offer significant connection speeds to secondaries and primaries. Secondaries get slightly higher connection speeds. So really, yes, you might be able to get an internet connection cheaper than the HPSN2, but it's not necessarily of the same quality and with all the other things that gets wrapped around it.
Okay, so is that part of the work to increase the number of schools to which you provide?
So we will be looking at what's the best possible service that we can offer to schools. We are looking at our requirements at the moment. We work with the Schools Resources Steering Group, which is a subsection of heads that come together to look at those kind of issues, and we'll be working with them on the requirements that schools have to make sure that we are covering what schools need. Clearly, schools have devolved budgets, and they're entirely at liberty to procure a different service. We think that the HBSN2 offers good value for money for what the school gets, but we will be looking at what our requirements need to be going forward, because clearly the HBSN2 requirements were set about 10 years ago.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you both. Okay, Councillor Tennant. Bruce.
Thank you, Chair. You've partially asked or had the question partially answered that I was going to ask on the top of page 119 about the accreditation. My question relates to parish councils, actually. I serve on 2 town and parish councils, and the pandemic has caused both of those parish councils technical problems. So they've both upgraded to Office 365, but they have other issues. My question is, do these accreditations, and you said the PSN is mandatory, is it mandatory for parish councils as well? The other 3, are they, you said, were voluntary? I'm just wondering, with respect to the to us at the county council and to parish councils, the parish councils are really struggling now. They work on smaller budgets. The members are not paid they don't get hardware. One of the parish councils has recently converted over to Zoom just because the chair of a parish council only has a Chromebook and can't get Teams on it. So the question I'm really asking is, how closely do the parish councils have to adhere to the same standards that we do at the county council?
The short answer is they don't need to. So the PSN standard, it only applies if you are communicating with central government over certain topics. One of those is Blue Badge, for example. So there's actually a very small subset. We use PSN as a way to give ourselves assurance, because it's an external accreditation, that our infrastructure is robust. If you want to take any kind of payment card payments, so debit cards or credit cards, you must adhere to the PCI DSS accreditation. If parish councils don't do that, then they don't need to have that certification. And the ISO standard, again, it's a voluntary. That's a voluntary accreditation that we undertake, and we do that because it provides the IT senior management, as well as chief officers and yourselves as members of the Policy Resources Select Committee, assurance, external assurance, that the IT infrastructure is managed in a secure way, appropriate for the kind of organisation and the size of organisation that we are.
Thank you, Simon. That's very good. Are we able to offer help to the parish councils?
It's not within our remit. However, if a parish council dropped me an email asking for some advice, then I certainly wouldn't turn them away. What I couldn't do is give lots of resource to helping a parish council support, do technical things, because I need to deploy those resources to county council business. But if a parish council approached me directly for some advice, then certainly I would offer it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Bruce. Okay. Now we've already had. We'll go on to Roger Huckstep, and then we'll come in with Councillor Collett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, Simon, congratulations to you and all your staff for the huge volume of work you've obviously gone through and reached a very high standard. And on a personal note, can I also ask you to pass on to your help desk staff my thanks to them for their efficiency and courtesy dealing with our calls on our IT troubles, put it that way. My question is something probably you can't answer, I regret. With the introduction of all this IT and remote working and having virtual meetings, we've saved, presumably, quite a lot of money in travel expenses. And I wondered if there's a figure out there somewhere which shows exactly how much we have saved, because it's clearly a huge contribution to reducing the costs of running the council.
First of all, thank you, Councillor Huckstep, for your comments. That's very much appreciated, and I'll certainly pass that on to the help desk. With regard to your question, yes, you're right. I don't have the answer to that, and I probably am unable to obtain that answer. That might be something for our colleagues in finance to answer that particular question. What I would say is absolutely, one of the purposes for implementing this technology and the strategy to take us down this route started some 3 years ago, and fortunately, not fortunately, but the pandemic has proven the value of that strategy. Was that it would enable us to do things remotely, and that it would enable people to work in different work settings. And as I mentioned in my report, I think there is an opportunity going forward to look at the operating model of how we work as officers, to think about different modes which could save us money across travel, property, etc., etc. So I think there are lots of opportunities where the technology can help us further, but unfortunately I don't have the figure that you have asked for.
Okay, Roger.
Thank you. Yes.
It's a good question, actually. I've actually tried to work out what the savings in petrol costs, travelling costs, just for councillors has been. And it's, if you just take your own costs and multiply it by the number of councillors we've got, that'd probably give you a pretty good idea of the savings in terms of councillors. I'm just not very sure about the number of staff that will be travelling backwards and forwards. So it's an interesting question. I'll bring you in a minute, Adrian. I've been advocating hybrid meetings since this lockdown started, because I love being able to attend meetings without having to travel. As a county councillor, it's really nice to be able to attend parish council meetings at 7 o'clock at night from the comfort of your home, and you are just as involved, if not more so, than you are actually physically at a parish council meeting. And there's no reason, as far as I can see, why we can't have hybrid meetings from here on in to suit the councillor or to suit the staff member. But that obviously has to be worked out, and it has to be rehearsed. But it would be a shame if we all had to go back to travelling in and out for every meeting that we took place. It's such a saving of time. Adrian Collett.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd start by echoing what you've just said. That does need looking at very seriously. It's saving of time, it's a saving of cost, and it's a saving of impact on the environment as well. There are all sorts of benefits, so I'm glad you're thinking that way. Chairman, I have a question. I have several comments I want to make. Do you want me to restrict myself to the question at the moment?
No, I think you just go straight through. You're the only hand up now, Adrian.
Okay. Well, my question first of all, Simon, and can I thank you, by the way, for several times you've had to personally intervene when my frustrations are built to the stage where I've emailed you to get things sorted out, and you've moved them on very helpfully. So thank you for that. It's much appreciated. My question relates to paragraph 13. In your speedy presentation, which was appreciated, it kept the thing alive and alert. So on IT, that one can easily glaze over. But you said something there was going to be updated, and I missed what that was.
It was the property asset management system that is used by Ccbs.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll dwell on that later on. My comments. First of all, I've got to acknowledge the fantastic things that have been achieved by IT, and I do so with pleasure in terms of facilitating home working, rolling out teams and so on, and many of the other projects that have been carried out. I'm one of those people that when I get in a car and drive it, I don't need to know what the carburetor does under the bonnet. As long as the car works and I can drive it to where I need to go, that's what I need. And I'm afraid I'm one of those people that's rather the same with IT. I'm not an IT expert. I rely on those that are. But I find increasingly that's not enough, particularly with a lot of the changes to systems that you just get used to, and then it all needs to change again. And now you can't do it on the iPad, you've got to do it on the hybrid, and all these sorts of things that are coming in. So I suppose it's an appeal for anything you can do to facilitate our understanding of those things. I certainly would find useful. Maybe other members don't have an issue with that, but I find that challenging, the fact that things change so often and you just can't keep up with it. I would comment that a 6-minute wait for an answer on the help desk phone as an average, I think that's something that needs to be improved. 6 minutes is quite a long time when you're sitting waiting on a phone. And if that's an average, that means half the people are waiting longer than that. And I know this is what happens when you have people and you're using people efficiently and so on, and you don't want spare capacity. But that's quite a long wait, particularly if you're trying to deal with something as an urgent matter. But the other thing is, of course, there have been times recently when we haven't been able to get through on the phone at all. The phone lines are being closed down and only access through the hybrid has been possible. And I presume we're past that now. The other area I would make an appeal on is the system used for reporting highway problems. From my point of view, has a lot of issues that still need to be resolved. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One is if you use that system as a councillor, you have no method of having a record of what you've put into it. All you get back is a number, a case number. Now, I've had to solve that. This is very sad, I know. But what I do now is I create a Word document of what I want to say in it, and then I import the text into it, and that way I can keep the Word document. But that's a cumbersome way of having to do business to overcome the issue. But the other thing then is the number of times you get no feedback at all. I think we've solved the problem of where residents are told that the issue's been resolved when all that's happened is that someone has been to have a look at it, but not necessarily resolved it. But I think that's an area that does still need a lot of improvement. So I hope those comments are helpful in giving you a member's perspective, or at least this member's perspective, on sorts of issues where we can make further improvements. Thank you, Chairman.
I think he speaks for all of us, actually, Simon.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Collett, and thank you, Chair. I will take up your comments about the highway system with colleagues in ETE, as it's their system. With regard to the 6-minute wait time, in fairness, I think that is partly due to, as we entered into the pandemic, we were inundated with calls, and we hadn't at that point we hadn't rolled out our new contact centre solution, so our ability to take calls over the telephone was a little bit limited in the early days of the pandemic. We are past that, and of course, when you implement any new system, you do just sometimes have teething problems, which will probably have accounted for the fact that you may not have been able to get through sometimes. Your comments around, for want of a better phrase, change fatigue when it comes to technology. We have seen a significant amount of change over the past 2 to 3 years because we have been doing this big transformation of that end user experience, and we are now at the end of that journey, which is great, and we're seeing the benefit. However, there will always be a need to upgrade systems as software becomes out of date and so forth. And unfortunately, it is one of the facts of life that the IT industry has built itself on built-in obsolescence. And unfortunately, that does mean that upgrades and replacements are a fact of life that we have to get used to. And some of the software that we use changes because the software vendor has changed it rather than because the HCC IT department has deemed it necessary to change. But absolutely take on board your points, and wherever we can put in place additional support to help members get to grips with new technology, we will certainly look at doing that.
Thank you.
Content, Councillor Collett.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I appreciate that response. Thank you.
Since there are no other hands up, I'll just finish on this, Simon. It's been very interesting.
Up, Chairman.
Yeah.
It's Russell.
I'm sorry. It's just not showing up on my list here. Oh, yes, you're at the top. I do apologise, Russell.
Well, I just wanted to come in on a couple of things. Firstly, in response to Councillor Collett, it just so happens that this week the ET committee has set up a working group on customer service issues. So Councillor Humby is going to chair that group, and we've got 6 committee members, including Councillor Simpson and Councillor Todd from the Lib Dems, and we're going to look at the whole piece of technology interface between councillors and the Hampshire highways. So watch that space. And briefly, I will comment, please, on the IT report, which I think is an excellent report. I really want to give huge thanks and praise to Simon Williams and the whole team for the part they've played in getting us through this pandemic. It's been amazing efforts, and they've all faced the challenges that we've all faced, but they've kept it all going. You know, today I'm remembering back to 12 months ago when we were all sat there at QE, and in Simon's report last year, he mentioned the rollout of Teams, and I asked a question about it and whether it would be available to councillors. Little did we know then that we would be living our lives on it 12 months later. But it really shows the foresight that Simon had to actually bring that technology through and have that plan. And really, I think that's a great feather in his cap. Having said those nice things, I'm going to have a bit of a moan, because I do feel that the compatibility of our Hampshire system with other ecosystems is unsatisfactory. And for those of us who've got a business to run or a job to do in our other lives, it's very difficult to manage. The diary doesn't interface with any other applications. It's very difficult to pull information out and to push it through. And I really think that some effort should be applied to figuring that out. We're going to get new councillors when we have an election this year, and they're all going to be busy people too. And I think it could be more user-friendly. And I think with a bit of effort on finding a way to do it securely, I think that it would be much appreciated by many councillors, including me. I think it'd be worth putting a bit of time into. So that's my plea, Simon. Please, can you have a think about that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oppenheimer. So thank you for your kind comments about my team's work. I will certainly pass that on, and they will appreciate that. With regard to the compatibility with other systems, there's a certain degree of this which is outside of our control. So, for example, if a member is also a district council member and they are using the same systems that we are using, you cannot persist the same technology for two organisations on a single device. So that sometimes causes problems. So if you wanted to have Microsoft Teams for one organisation or Microsoft Teams for Hampshire County Council, that can cause issues. We also, for data security reasons, insist that we don't forward things like calendar invites to other email systems. We want it to be contained within the Hampshire County Council email system. And the reason for that is because you can attach documents and other potentially confidential information into those calendar items. And as such, that's why we don't allow forwarding out to, for example, a Google Calendar or another email system. So I'll certainly take it away and have a look with my team as to what we could possibly do, but I can't give you a guarantee that that's something I'm going to be able to solve for you.
Nice one, Russell.
Thank you.
And you're dead right, actually. What I've been doing for years is running a paper diary. A paper diary actually is quite a useful thing to run. It doesn't matter how technically wonderful we all are. So you've got all the different avenues of your life coming down on a bit of paper. It does mean having to transpose all your Teams meetings onto your diary, but that's no bad thing because you can write down all the ID numbers for the Zooms and all that sort of thing to save you having to go on the computer to get all that information. So it's a way of doing it, and it works. It does work. And if anybody gives up the paper diary, they're in trouble, right? And I bet you even Simon Williams has a paper diary. Okay, right, there you go. Right, Councillor Carew.
Yes, just to support Russell in his concerns, I do have a paper diary, but also get very frustrated about not being able to combine both district and county diaries. My other concern really is often I'm sent out an important message by county. I say important but not confidential, things that are of use to my local residents. In the past, I would be able to just email that and cascade it out to people. now I'm no longer able to because it doesn't allow me to. And I find that very, very difficult indeed. So I wonder if Simon would kindly have a look at that issue as well.
Councillor Carey, thank you. I will certainly take that away for you.
Thank you for that, Adam. Thank you for that, Simon. And you take your hand down, please, Adam. Thank you very much. If we're talking about bugbears, it's not something that you can deal with, Simon, but GDPR is causing us a headache. You get a two-page complaint from a member of the public, and really we don't want to rewrite it for that member. We'd rather just send it on to the lead officer. But you can't do that until you've got hold of the member of public and got permission to use his email. And what happens is that in the past, you say, could I please send on your email? And 10 days later, you get an answer, yes. Right? And a lot of water has passed under the bridge with everything else that's going on. So I've learned to ring the person up and say, look, I'm not going to talk about it, but can I send on your email? And that's actually the quickest way of dealing with it at the moment. But I'd love to have a system where when somebody writes in an email, they actually give you permission there and then to use your email, because we're public servants. But, you know, that's something for the future. Right, everybody. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a fascinating morning, actually, I've found, and it's great fun to be chairing P&R because I have to say that the comments that come in, the questions that come in, actually are really worthy of the Policy and Resources Committee right across the board. So thank you all very much. I'll thank you now, Simon, so you don't have to stay, but many thanks, Simon, for your hard work and for being here today. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
I think we have a verbal agreement to agree this report. Is that correct, Louise?
We do.
That's correct,
Okay,
Chairman.
so let's just wave your hand if you're all in favour of agreeing the report.
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much. I think we're near the end of this. We're now on to the work programme, which has been alluded to quite a number of times. So I think it's building up. I know it's looking a bit sparse at the moment, but it's building up. I imagine by the time we reach March, there will be more items for us to discuss. But I do repeat, should any of you feel that there's something worthy of discussion, since it's not a very big work programme for the next meeting, now's the time to get it in. So please just get it to Louise and myself, and we have an acting vice chairman, but just the two of us at the moment until we have a full-time vice chairman. That would be really handy. It's real scrutiny is about thinking of things between the meetings. That's where real scrutiny comes in. Now, unless I'm wrong, I think, as far as I'm concerned, are you all happy with that as a report of the work programme?
I think Jackie Porter had her hand raised, Councillor Glenn.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Just doing a quick charge of the computer at the same time. Chairman, thank you very much. I just had two things I wanted to raise. One in the consultation policy, which we haven't really looked at for a while, and that was going to be, it says to retain for future update, timing TBC. Yeah. I wonder if it is appropriate to do it at this point in time, particularly since we've had a year of remembering what all this is like, and possibly by the time we get to June and September, hopefully we'll be out of this situation. But we'll have learnt a lot about how to involve the public online in a different, possibly cheaper way. And also the value of the residents forum that's been set up and was set up during last year, and whether that has been valuable and whether we should be taking something forward in more assertively for that. And the second point is the crime and disorder paper, which we have see usually as an annual report, and which is very long and so ends up becoming quite a challenge to get through, as well as anything else on the plan. I wondered if we could take the child exploitation and the county lines part separate, because the work during and after COVID has been very specific, and I wondered if that would be appropriate to include as a separate subject rather than as part of the general AGM type report.
Thank you for that, Jackie. So I take it those are you finished your comments again.
I'll send those in by writing as well, but I just
thank you. I've often thought I'd like to get to drill into more detail on the crime and disorder paper, because there's so much we do tend to flit through it. Although the questions are very interesting, now and again it would be nice to know more. And county lines are a big issue for all of us in all the divisions. If we can leave that with Louise and I and whoever the vice chairman is going to be, is that okay?
Thank you, that's really appreciated.
And the question about the residents forum, forgive me for being a bit thick. Who brought that up? Who invented that?
Well, the county council invited members of the public to become part of the residents forum. I think it might have a slightly different title than that, but it's I think we have about 800 people that are currently on that list, and they invited them during last year, and they are asked to answer questions on specific subjects. I think it's almost like a focus. It's used as a focus group. But I just thought, as part of the consultation policy, we might look at the success or challenges of the forum to date.
And to find out what's concerning the public, actually, to make the scrutiny committees more relevant. Right, okay, we'll take that on board. And you're right about the consultation policy. We haven't looked at that for some time. I remember it when it first came up. Okay, that's very helpful. Any other useful comments from people, members? Sorry, county councillors. Okay.
Sorry, Chairman, could I just, yes, in response to Councillor Porter's comments, say that the consultation policy actually has been was scrutinised by the committee before it was adopted, so that we wouldn't necessarily have any feedback from that policy, because any actions and implementations that were taken forward as that was agreed would be covered by the departmental select committee, so the Children's and Young People Select Committee. So it's for each of those departments to take on board that policy. So there's nothing for this committee to actually look at. It would be for the departments to enact that policy that was agreed, I think, back in 2016. So was there anything in particular?
Go on, Jackie.
They wouldn't necessarily judge the success of that policy, would they?
That's the next step.
It would be the department's, the success of that policy. So
yeah, particularly in line. Okay. Yeah, particularly in line with the changing face of consultation at the moment, which is primarily online.
I think the answer here actually is quite interesting, is that we need to get feedback from the other select committees as to the success of the consultation paper, the policy that we put out. I think we need to know. That could be something that that's why we have the chairman of the committees here. They might want to take that on board and see how successful that has been. And when we've had a reasonable length of time, that can come back to our committee. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. Okay.
Yes.
Louise, are you okay with that?
That's fine. I just wanted to make members aware of that point.
Very valid. Very valid.
I think also Councillor Westbrook has his hand raised, so I'm not sure he wants to add something.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I think one get a bit confused here. I mean, we asked for this to be put back on because it had dropped off, and then earlier in the year, on the consultation I'm talking about now, I think Jackie's right. Actually, I think it's quite relevant in the recent problems we've been having. I mean, Russell might want to pick up on this as well as chair of ETE, because a number of large transport projects that have been out there in the last 12 months in particular. I know for a fact that in my division, there's been quite a lot of media stuff, the local press, but as far as consultation goes, it's only really been the normal routes in. It's not been the normal possibility to go to a local hall and look at the plans and talk to officers and really sort of get to the bottom of things. So I'm wondering how, even if it's how we consult during times like COVID, where we cannot reach the public, that's a broad issue. And I agree with the fact that individual chairs will be dealing with that, and maybe we'll be able to deal with that. But as a scrutiny committee for policy and resources, I think we want to know generally how the council is dealing with that across the board.
I take on board the broader issues. We could look at the broader issues. I still like the select committees to look at how successful they are. Look, leave that to me to discuss with Louise to see how we can bring that back in to look at the broader issues. And there may be an officer who can help us. Louise, if you could put your mind to that, that'd be quite handy.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay. We'll look at the broader issues as a committee. Right, everybody. Assuming you've all basically exhausted yourselves and are ready to have lunch, I'd like to wish you all the very best. I would like to thank Louise for all her hard work helping me to put this all together, or maybe I'm helping her to put it together. I can't work that one out. And I wish you all a very happy afternoon. And don't forget that the Councillor Manns will be having his decision day at 2 o'clock, if you're interested. PNR Executive Decision Day on Teams. Right, I now close the meeting. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thanks, Chair.